Blog Talk Radio.
This is our land. These are our people. The workers, the strivers, the builders. These are our people. Who are they? They are the dark armies. The dark murdering armies whose only honor
1876.
Have you ever stopped to ponder the fundamental question, is the current state of American governance serving its people the way it was originally intended? In the heart of this question lies an intriguing journey, a journey of the restored republic interim government. The restored republic is not a new political party. It's not a protest. It's not an attempt to overthrow the government. Rather, it's a lawful, peaceful mechanism that the American people can use to occupy vacated government seats. It's a journey back to constitutional governance, a journey that started in 2010. The interim government of the restored republic was established with a singular vision: to reclaim the American republic. The mission is not to reinvent the wheel, but to transition back to the principles outlined in the Constitution, principles that have been diluted over time. It's about a return to the essence of democratic republic, where the people hold the power, not a select few. How does the restored republic plan to achieve this? Through the power of the Northwest Ordinance. This ordinance is a legal tool that allows the citizens of the United States of America to restore their government to its original state. The focus is on the states, with a goal for each state to rally 30,000 supporters for lawful elections. However, the success of this endeavor is not solely dependent on the interim government. The role of the American people in this transition period is pivotal. This is not a passive movement. It requires active participation, engagement, and dedication from every American who believes in liberty and justice for all. The restored republic interim government is fully aware of the challenges that lie ahead. They understand the hurdles that come with change, yet they remain steadfast in their mission, fueled by the belief that a government should serve its people, not the other way around. The journey of the restored republic is a testament to the power of the people. It's a journey towards a government that respects the rule of law, values the voice of its citizens, and upholds the principles of the Constitution. The interim government of the restored republic is more than just an interim governing body. It's a beacon of hope for those who have lost confidence in the current government. It's a call to action for the American people to reclaim their republic. In summary, the restored republic interim government is a lawful mechanism to occupy vacated government seats with a mission to transition back to constitutional governance. The Northwest Ordinance serves as the legal tool for this transition. The goal is for each state to rally 30,000 supporters for lawful elections. The role of the American people is crucial in this transition period. The journey of the restored republic is a journey back to the essence of a representative republic. It's a journey of change, of hope, and of reclaiming the American republic. The call to action is clear for every American who believes in liberty and justice for all. This is your moment to step up, to participate, and to make a difference. Your republic needs you, now more than ever.
Okay, there you have it right there. I mean, I think that's the best way to explain it right there, really. I mean, you know, now, of course, you're going to have idiots out there going to criticize it and pick it apart and analyze it like a potato chip and, you know, and break it apart and, you know, and dip it in sour cream. And, you know, I mean, and I want to address that tonight. With this crap of all this, now everybody's fighting over a title of over a show. You know, I mean, look, man, you know, I understand some people have strong personalities and whatnot, but, you know, it's common sense. Everyone has to use it. Common sense. That's it. That's all it takes. I could have very been selfish and said, no, we're gonna do it on my show this weekend or that next weekend. No, instead I passed it over, turned it over to another show. I said, you know, let's see if they'll volunteer to do it. And I nominated a show to do it, and everyone started coming up with a title. Next thing I know, I'm getting messages and everybody fighting over the title. And, this person saying this person saying that. And I don't even remember saying anything. I just said, whatever you guys decide. That's what I remember saying. I don't know if people are putting words out there and saying that I said this or said that or said this or said what. Look, I had a conversation with Joe, okay, and he said that he had a disagreement with Lorianne on her show. And I said, look, I understand that this person may not want to do it this Father's Day weekend because they had something planned, but whatever you guys decide, you decide. That's all it's to it. I agreed. Now, between he and I, we agreed on a title. Now, if the other people don't like it, well, then we have to change it because in a republic, that's how a republic works. If we are not unanimous about a decision, then it's null and void, right? It's not a majority rules, you see? Even how we live, even how we operate, we do the same thing the corporation does. Asinine majority rules and overcoming everyone else's will. And it's the same crap. We're never going to change. That's why it's going to have to come to force, and people are going to have to forcibly be put down. It's going to take 3% of righteous people, a righteous army, to stand up and sacrifice and say, hey, this is the way it's going to be. I just don't know what else to say or how to talk about this. If we cannot come together on small podcast shows like this, how the hell are you going to sit down with the United States military and these corporate senators and like we in 2010? That's what we did. You just heard a guy say it right there. In 2010, this is what we did. And I remember I was one of the ones that stood up in Chapel Hill. I said, now how the hell are you going to get on the 6 o'clock news and tell people this is the way it's going to be? There's no way. There's no way. It's not going to happen. We met, and then we all agreed that, well, why don't we put it off for 10 years? And then they had the pandemic in 2020. And Trump was going. We already knew Trump was going to be president. We knew they were rigging the elections. They pulled the stops out on there. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to divulge any secrets. But, and then they got back at us in 2020. And people can, look, man, I was there. I've had witnesses come on the podcast show, people that were with me that were there. We sat down. I had retired United States Army General Valet on this program, on this podcast. If you want, I'll replay the podcast next week where I had he's the only United States general to ever set foot on the ground in Syria during wartime. Okay? Only general to set down in the Middle East, excuse me. Okay? He said that. He made that statement on my podcast. And then we had other people. We had lieutenant colonels on. We had, I remember having Sean Rowe on from Veterans Against ISIS. So we had all this lined up, and now we're trying to do it again because we see what's going on. They're getting ready to lead us into World War III, and people just don't. They just can't get along. They just don't want to. But everyone wants to fight. We did a show a few weeks ago on the Lucid Libertarian show with some people that were, spokesmen or about Righteous Army and putting together the Righteous Army. That's just one phase of it. But everyone took it to face value and wanted to start arguing over that, I remember. Oh, I don't know. That's a dictatorship. What are you talking about? A dictatorship. It's our republic. We're re-inhabiting the real Constitution. Because we are a corporation, and you have no rights in a corporation. You don't have any rights. You're not going to vote your way out of this, folks. You're not. It's not going to happen. But anyway, back to this podcasting. We want to do a Father's Day show where we, but everybody's strung out on the title. I don't even know what the hell the title's supposed to be now anymore. I don't even know. Father's Day, this for marching. I don't even know anymore. I don't even know if we're doing it. Last I heard was we were still a go, and I don't know, but where we're going to do it now. I thought we were going to do it Sunday night on Lorianne's show on June 16th. And then it got switched to Donnie C's show. Hey, he doesn't even know what's going on probably. Then it got switched to Robert's show, and then now it's back to Lorianne's show. Now I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I didn't send any messages out to. I wanted to do a D-Day tribute show, but talk about that type of stuff, how we're leading back into repeating history. But if anyone can chime in here and maybe cue in here and maybe let me know what's going on, I'd appreciate it, because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth and start promoting this show and nobody's going to be there, you know. So let me take, let's see, 503. Let me connect 503. Go ahead. Hello, 503.
Hey, it's me, Lorianne.
What's going on? What's the word?
You know, my AC unit decided not to work, so I'm trying my best to see if I can fix it myself before calling somebody in.
Central air?
Other than that, I'm hanging out. Huh?
The central air unit? You got central air, or is it a window unit you're trying to fix?
Central air.
Oh, God. That's rough right there.
Yeah, so at least it's not like 90 degrees. It's 83 degrees, but it's supposed to be 87 tomorrow. So
yeah.
I'm crossing my fingers. You know, I looked up, you know, online things to try, and those units have a reset button. I was able to find that and reset
Does it have to be charged?
And then I cut power off.
Does it have to be charged?
Huh?
Do you need Freon? You might need Freon. You might need to have it charged.
It might need, it might need that. But some of the things to try, because it just wasn't turning on at all. So sometimes it's like, you know, if the Freon is low or something, then sometimes it'll still be blowing air, but it just won't be cooling, you know.
Yes, correct.
Very well. But, you know, it just wouldn't, you know, turn on at all. And so trying the reset button, and then I turned power off at the circuit breaker, because I read that that's another way to get it to fully reset. And, you know, so you turn off the power and leave it for about a half hour so that any and all, you know, electrical current is completely out of the unit. So who knows? Maybe there was a power surge or something that, you know.
I got another suggestion for you. Did you check the fuse? The fuse in the thermostat? There's usually a fuse inside the thermostat.
No, I didn't. The thermostat is working, though, because I switched it over to heat just to see if, you know, if I turn the heat on, if it would kick on, and it did. So the thermostat's okay. If it turned heat on, it should, you know, it should work for cooling as well. So
not necessarily. I don't know. It depends how many fuses you got in there. I don't know. Some thermostats are different. I remember I had that problem once with a digital thermostat, is that the fuse went in it, and they always told me check the fuse first. You know, so that's what they told me. So I don't know, because sometimes if you have a heat pump, it won't matter the fuse. I don't think the fuse will affect it then. You know what I mean? I don't know off the top of my head. But you know, you're doing the right thing. I mean, but check the fuse. I would check that out. I mean, that's a 90-cent fix right there, you know. So
there you go. Yeah, you're right. It's possible. Well, if what I try doesn't work, then I'll do that next and see what I can do before I have to try to cough up money to, you know, get somebody out here.
Oh, yeah, that's big bucks. They charge
Lord
just to come
knows
out
I don't
there.
have it.
Now, what's the deal with the show now?
Exactly.
I know you sent me some messages. What's the deal with the show? Have you heard anything? What's going on? Did you talk to Joe? You guys, I mean, what's the deal here?
Not since yesterday, no.
Okay.
We just kind of left it as is. Apparently the show is going to be hosted elsewhere. That's fine.
Really?
No problem. Whatever. That's what he said. I don't know where or when, you know, but he said that it was going to go out and go be on some other platform. You know, like you said, maybe it's Robert's platform, maybe it's somebody else's. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't care at this point. I just, you know, he was, you know, I mean, he even agreed with my title change, you know. And here's the thing. Yesterday on your show, I was only in the chat room. You know, so everybody's talking, you know, and I agreed to do it. And then we came into, you know, when are we going to do it? And I said, well, you know, I already have things in mind for this Sunday. So how about next Sunday? And then I realized next Sunday's Father's Day. And then I asked, you know, is having it on Father's Day a good thing or a bad thing? You know, and then everybody on the call was talking about, you know, what to call it in the title.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so it's like, and I had, like, no say in the matter. You know, I put a suggestion in the chat room, but it's like, you know, so it's all decided, and, you know, and so I think I came up with a pretty good title for the show. You know, Father's Day, you know, bringing America back to its glory, something like that. And, you know, conveys the message that I think that throughout that discussion was trying to be conveyed. And so, and I wanted the title to sound inclusive, not exclusive. The title that was decided on, I kind of felt like it was, you know, exclusive.
What was it? Can you remind me? What was that title? Can you remind me?
Let me look it up again.
Because I don't remember.
So I get it exactly right. You know, there's a lot of this back and forth, and I'm like, okay, well, if it's going to be on my platform, I'm thinking it's common sense that you ask the person whose platform it is, you know, that, you know, they have a say in the matter, right? You know, and
yeah, I thought you were already on board. That's why I said
apparently
the things I
that's unreasonable, according to Montana Joe. That's unreasonable of me, and I'm creating drama because I want to have a fucking say in the show title that's going to be on my platform. If it wasn't on my platform, then I don't care. Call it whatever you want. But my platform, I have a say in the matter. So, you know, but apparently I'm wrong for that. And he showed his
I didn't know. I thought you were already on board with it. Because when I said it, everybody was like, yeah, she's on board with it. And that's why I started shooting off titles. And I was like, okay. But I didn't care if you guys changed the title. I didn't care. I even told them that. I said, well, I don't care, you know, if you guys want to change it. I mean, but really, we shouldn't be hung up on that anyway, like I said in the opening, you know. Let me see. 907 wants to jump in here. Let me see what's up with him. Maybe he's got some feedback on this. Go ahead, dear, 907.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
I'm gonna ask a question that's gonna probably piss both of you guys off.
Okay.
But my question is, I was late getting into your show last night or whatever. You know, I was in at the tail end of your show. You guys were all talking about this show and everything, and I haven't got a clue as to what you guys are talking about.
Okay.
Could one of you tell me what this show is that you guys are now kind of bickering over just a fucking title?
Lorianne, I'll let you do the honors. How's that?
Well, you guys are the ones that were bringing it up. You know, essentially getting different blog talk hosts, other hosts of shows, participants to do a round table. Basically, like coming up with ideas, solutions, action items. Montana Joe is going to moderate so that everybody gets their turn, you know, like with a 2-minute or 3-minute limit, and then move on to the next person so people aren't screaming over each other, that sort of thing. So that was the idea, and getting, you know, like I said, getting various hosts of different shows together, and then Joe Gibson and some others, we were going to visit other people's shows to let them know, hey, come to Lucid Libertarian on Sunday, June 16th, and let's have a conversation about this. And so that was kind of the premise of what was discussed yesterday on Joe Gibson's show.
Okay, now.
So that's kind of the rundown. And
now let me back.
Go ahead, boys.
Let me back you up a little bit. You told me to have a conversation and a rundown and whatnot. What is the subject? What are we going to have a conversation about?
How to save America. How to rein in our tyrannical government, basically. The corruption and elections, and, you know, because this election's coming up, it's a very, very important one. We all know that. And so that was, you know, let's come up with some solutions. What can we do between now and November to help rein in some of this corruption that we know is going to happen. You know it. We had a corrupt election last time. It's going to be corrupt again. What can we do about it?
Well, so
we need to save America before it goes completely down the toilet.
Let me ask this. Let me continue with my inquiry into this show. Okay, since it's going to be with all of the show hosts, quote unquote, is this to be a thing where all of the show hosts will agree to a, not so much as a singular subject, but a singular idea and of sorts that everybody will be discussing like the same thing on their shows that they put on, will kind of touch on not so much as a particular subject, but idea type of thing?
What do you think, Lorianne? You want to answer that?
Or a particular
no, go ahead.
theme?
I got distracted.
All right. I think I'm trying to get what you're trying to get at. Are you saying that we're going to come up with one solution and then everyone's going to try to stick to that and fight with that solution, like a laser beam, and stick focused on it? Is that what you mean?
Or a particular theme to go down with, you know, a theme, not so much as a particular subject in their shows, but a particular like theme of the week or theme of the day or something like that.
Yes. Okay, I see
so
where you're getting at. Yes. That's basically the logistics of what we're trying to do, because we're all scattered all over the place, and all we do is we're wasting time. We're gossiping every single week, and then we're shouting over each other, and sometimes we're arguing, and sometimes we have good conversations and laugh or whatever, but it's a waste of time, and I think everybody was frustrated the other night, and we're just sick and tired of it, and we want to see results already. We want to see people out there committing themselves to an action plan to fixing this country. We're sick and tired of it. And if we could light a spark with the podcasters somehow, some way, then so be it. We all got big mouths. Let's use it. You know, let's use the First Amendment. Let's get everyone together and do this instead of talking about it all the time and doing nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay. Now, if I can make a suggestion, okay.
Yeah.
Rather than fighting it out now, like on your show, you know, because not all of us do podcasts or do shows. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of us that show up and we participate in the shows and everything.
Yep.
But you are trying to get the hosts to kind of control the theme of whatever their show is going to be about over a general idea theme. And you know, for that type of a discussion, I mean, it's okay. Like if guys like me, Sarge, Pionki, and all of that maybe sit in and listen, but or the other aspect that I'm going to get down to is that this be not necessarily a show, but like doing.
No, we want you to contribute. We want you to contribute.
But well, yeah, I can understand that, okay, and I also understand what you guys are trying to do and trying to organize around. All right? Now, having been somebody who has been in this type of situation, those of us that were leaders of various groups, I know that there was 3 of us to take 3 separate groups and put out the same message from each group. You know, when we were going to D.C. or going to go see the government or something like that. Mm-hmm. And our general, our agreement between the 3 of us, okay, that were legislative affairs guys in our respected groups, we would go into a room, like pretty much like the 3 of us, and we would have it out. We would discuss everything, fight it out, and, you know, blood, guts, and, you know, tears, you know, type of shit.
Yeah.
But the thing is that after all that fighting right then and there was, no matter what, we also all agreed, whether we really agreed or not, but we all agreed that when we come out of that room, we all spoke the same. We all spoke the same way about that particular subject matter or whatever. All right?
Yeah.
And what I am suggesting, okay? I wish Montana Joe was here and stuff like that, and some of the other hosts. But what I'm suggesting is that you guys, as hosts of the show, go in there, go behind the closed doors or whatever. You know, you're not going to be blocking us out of it, but you guys go in there, a smaller group, fight it out, organize it. You guys all come to an agreeable answer, solution, or whatever you want to call it. And then you can come out of that room. All of you are speaking, you know, along the same lines. Introduce what your plan is, what you're thinking about doing to the rest of us. And then the rest of us can start shooting holes into it or suggesting, you know, we put more armor here, or we watch out for weak spots to armor them up in certain fashions. But I mean, that's kind of the way really our our government, whether it's the one we got now in D.C. or the this so-called de jure government, would operate under a republic thing, is that we send our representatives to the group, they go in, hash it out. When they come up with a solution or a conclusion or whatever, they come back out of the room. They let the rest of us know what they come up with and what they suggest, present it to us, and then we, as the constituents, can agree or disagree with it. But you guys are pretty much solid back behind this idea solution. Doesn't mean that your idea and solution that you come out of that room with is going to be popular, right, or wrong, or anything like this. But you guys go in there, work it out, come out, present it to us, and then we will, like I said, bolster it, agree with it, shoot holes in it, play devil's advocate or whatever, that we can do. But at least all of the hosts, along the way are kind of are presenting this, presenting the same idea on their shows. Doesn't mean that their shows have to, and you guys have to agree. The whole show has to be about you guys also have to agree that nobody's locked in on their shows of how they're going to present it.
Yeah.
Because everybody is different with the same idea, present it differently, but with the same core hard facts or conclusions.
I think
and be at it like that, and stop fighting over whose shows it's going to be on and stuff. You guys just get your asses together, with the 6 or 8 show hosts that the bulk of us listen to and come to. And then
we had 10
when
people
you guys
the other night
got
on.
when you guys got something figured out, come out, talk to us about it, and like I said, we agree or disagree. Well, and then then everybody works around our agreements and disagreements and stuff like that, and just we all agree. I mean, you are never going to get 100% of all the people to think all the same way. No matter how much you wish you could do that, it's never gonna fucking happen.
No, I know, and we're going to try to cut back. And when we discuss these, but it's not always all the shows are going to be like this, and everybody's platform is going to be taken over. We're just going to dedicate. We're going to come up with an idea where we're using this voice that we have, all of us together, somehow, some way throughout from now until the elections, like Lorianne said, to have an action plan that it's going to be addressed from time to time and continue to be addressed. Not us bouncing around all different ways and all different avenues and nothing ever getting done. We're going to stick to it this time. We're going to, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I understand, and I understand what you're trying to do. What you and Joe and Lorianne, Donnie C, if he comes on board, Robert, if they all come on board, to hash this out and talk about it. Yeah. I think it would be I think it would be best instead of like this everybody stepping on, trying to step on each other as to whose shows we're going to do this on or whatever. I think it would be best that the hosts just get together, under one thing, and it doesn't, and it probably should not be a show like we're doing right now, that's broadcast, unless everybody except for the host and everybody else is muted. Okay.
Well, that's another thing. Listen, that's another thing too. We're going to address is that we're going to probably bring everybody on. Is that we're not going to be going around the block 90 times. We're all going to be like Sarge. He can get to a point pretty well. He can explain it thoroughly. We got other people that like to go carry on, and that was one of the problems that we were going to have. Is that we're wasting a lot of time arguing with each other, and we're arguing forever about the same damn thing, and nothing's getting done. I mean, we're all talking about the same damn thing when you think about it. But that's all we're doing, and I think people are starting to get frustrated.
Okay, well, Joe, let me address that what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, then I want to get to the D-Day thing.
Sometimes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Huh?
No, go ahead. Then I want to talk about some D-Day stuff. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, some. If we go at it in unified formation front, okay, we are going to lose. But with everybody coming in, and we all know that the objective is to do a certain thing. If everybody can take their little ideas and maybe approach the problem from a different direction, you know, but we're all moving in sync, you know, to the
well, that's the key.
We know what we know is the conclusion, and we all move in at that, maybe with everybody's slightly different ideas, you know, you overwhelm them, you know, type of thing. You know, you surround them and overtake them that way. You know, where we're coming in from the front and from the flanks.
Is she still there? I know she's still there. I see her number there. Lorianne, you still there? What do you think about what
I
Boyd
was
just had?
muted on my end.
Oh, okay.
Screwing around with my AC unit. Yeah, I think that, you know, I follow you. And that was the intent for the show, was basically to get everybody together and present these ideas and then, take it and run with it. You know, whatever action plan is decided on, whatever, you know, whatever actions each person is willing to take and discuss on their shows later, that's fine. You know, it's kind of like a brainstorming thing. You know, the whole point was to determine, you know, let's come up with some ideas and what can we do about it and what, you know, like we're going to have a brainstorming session.
Yeah.
Well, that is, you know, that is where I saw fault in the tea parties, okay? Because everybody wanted everybody else to follow them on their ideas. Well, that was bullshit, and it kept the tea parties apart, and it also kept them weak. But we didn't, as a tea party, come to a focal point, and that's what we need. We need a focal point. Now, everybody, you don't have to follow me and my ideas. If you got another idea on how you're going to get it to that focal point, fine. Go to that focal point. That's fine, you know. Everybody, you know, in the Tea Party, you know, some of them were going at the abortion, some were going at the taxes, some were going, you know, at corruption, some were going at blah, 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 you know. But nobody was able to get everybody focused in, you know, to go through all of those subjects into the focal point. What is the ultimate target? What is victory? Okay? I mean, some of the Tea Parties would have small victories here. Some of them would have small victories there. And then once they've reached their victories, they were kind of out of the thing. They couldn't regroup and continue on to the focal point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's where I think the organizational stuff should fall into. You know, it would be nice and great to get all of the conservatives hosts across all of the platforms to agree on a focal point and what is victory. What is the real target we want to get to? We have to go through a whole bunch of fucking bullshit and everything, but you know, it's like in World War II. You know, we'll just take up the D-Day thing. All right, our focal point, our point was to take Omaha Beach, get a beachhead, and move towards Berlin. The Russians, on the other hand, they had already had their asses kicked and were moving. But where were they moving? They were moving to Berlin. You know, and everybody had to fight their own little battles. But as we fought our own little battles, we were closing in on Berlin. That was the focal point, you know. And I don't think anybody has that type of focus to go to final victory. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and, you know, D-Day, we saw it was 80th anniversary. So, obviously, the 85 is probably going to be, there's not going to be many left of these guys, you know. So, my concern is this. History gets lost. Once the dying witnesses start dying off and there's no more somebody out there who can tell it like it was and say it like it was, there's no reliable truth anymore other than writings and teachings and hand-me-down words from what somebody said. Distortion starts to begin, and we're going to see that probably in our lifetime. The stories, we're already seeing it, as a matter of fact, history not being told, you know, and that's the danger of it, because if the truth is not told of what happened in World War II, what happens to us later on as time goes on? What happens? We see our country falling apart now because we're not learned from the history or the lessons of yesterday anymore. Now we're destined to repeat history. We're going to march right back into a global war because we're making the same mistakes again. You know? Do you see my point there on that?
Well, so, you know, I understand. I understand that, Joe. Okay, and yes, that's where we're at. Today. It's just that somehow, somewhere, we have to go and knock some heads together, get some people out of offices, put some other people in there, let them look at, let us see everything that they're seeing and making their decisions on, so that we can concur or we can say, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, that's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, you see, Lorianne had somebody from World War II in her family. What was it? Was your grandfather or father that fought in the Navy up there?
My grandfather. Yeah, my grandfather.
So you have documented history, right?
My dad was a Marine, you know, in the Pacific. My dad was at Pearl Harbor. You know,
so we have documented history there of the truth of what happened up there, you know, or I don't know what proof you have, or, you know, other than, you know, you knowing him and what he told you. I don't know if you got letters or photographs or anything like that, you know, but documented proof would be awesome, because then that's something that's, you know, all I'm saying is I'm giving you an example. You have proof now you can have for your, you know, throughout the rest of your life. Some people don't have that, so they go and they start buying into the narratives or the fake news out there, you know. So, you know, let's see, what do you put? The show title I came up with. Oh, the show title that Lorianne came up with for the show was Father's Day, Bringing America Back to Her Glory. Okay. Yeah, I think I remember now you saying that. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, so and the show that discussed yesterday was Montana Joe wanted fathers seeking to bring America. Fathers seeking to bring America back. You mean, is that what he said? Joe said, or is it just fathers seeking to bring America? Well, I don't know. I don't think he said just that. He said fathers seeking to bring America back.
Yeah, bring America back. To bring America back.
Okay, listen.
Fathers seeking to bring America back.
This is okay. Fighting over the title is bullshit. I mean, the title right now is bullshit. You know, I don't think there's ever an author out there that has written a book. They may have a title in mind while they're writing the book, but as they go through the book, that title that they think the book should be may change 4 or 5 times, you know, during the course of writing his book. You know, so the title is not that important. It's the content,
I don't know. Sometimes titles catch you, they get you hooked.
It sets the tone. The title sets the tone.
I would think,
So I think it is important. That
I
people
kind of got to agree with Lorianne on that one.
Even people that aren't invited, people are strolling. They're seeing what live shows are on. They're looking at the show title, and based on the title, that can determine whether or not they're even going to click on it and check out what the show's about. So it is, it is important to have a good title.
Yeah, I kind of got to agree with that in a way. I mean, it may not matter to you, Boyd. It may not matter to you, and some people it doesn't probably matter to. But mostly, the consensus is, I would say it does matter.
Yeah.
I would say in a majority. But I mean, I didn't announce tonight's show. I just sporadically put this on. I only got about maybe like 7 people on the line here tonight, 7, 8 people. So I don't know if Sarge is out there tonight. Want to talk about D-Day? I did this show because I usually do a show because of Sarge. Talk about D-Day, how important it is to our history. I mean, I watched a lot of documentaries today on it, man. So that's why I was kind of inspired about doing the show. I mean, man, this generation of people that we're losing, this greatest generation of men and women that were back, there was just, one thing they brought up today that was so important, accountability. You know what I mean? They were accountability. Like if they were wrong, like Eisenhower, he wrote two speeches, one for victory and one if he failed. And one if and the one that if he failed, he was prepared to take full accountability. It was going to be his fault that the mission, with storming the beaches didn't work. He was willing to take responsibility. You don't see that today. You don't see none of that today. You see deniability today, right?
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. How can I get away with it? How can I never admit a mistake because otherwise it'll make me look bad? That's the mentality in our government today.
Yeah. Go ahead, Boyd.
I mean, that's true, But, it's like D-Day, all right? There were a lot of men that had jobs that were extremely important, and none of those guys ever fucking hit the beach. Never had a bullet fired at them in anger because of the job that they had. But had those guys not performed their job, D-Day would never have happened.
Okay.
I mean, I was watching.
Private caller here. You're right, Boyd.
I was watching the show where guys out in little boats, from England, went out to the minefields in the English Channel, cleared a channel, and they were set there to guide the invasion fleet itself through that minefield. That was their job for D-Day, and that's all that they did that day.
Yeah.
Had
Go
those
ahead, Sarge.
guys
I think
not
it's Sarge. I'm sorry, Boyd. I didn't know. I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it was like, and so if those guys had not performed their job as brilliantly as they did that day, D-Day would never have happened.
Sure. Sarge?
Well, Boyd is raising such an important point. He really is. And I'll tell you why. Because as much as we laud, quite properly, the heroism of the men, particularly on Omaha Beach in the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions, sustained all those horrific casualties, and to a slightly lesser extent, the British and Canadians at Gold, Juno, and Sword Beach, and, of course, the brilliant improvisation of Teddy Roosevelt, who was leading the 4th Division ashore at Utah Beach, when they landed in the wrong spot. He decided, well, look, we can do it right from here. And he brilliantly improvised a landing, so it went ahead probably even better than had they landed in the correct spot because he was such a great combat leader. So we're honoring people like that, and we should, because there's still just legions of stories of men who were able to overcome, despite all the plans going wrong, because everything got snafu. I mean, everything. The bomb craters weren't there on the beach like they were supposed to be because the bombers that delayed their drop because they were afraid of hitting the ships in the channel. So they delayed the drop. So instead of hitting either the German beach positions or creating bomb craters so the infantry could hide in, they dropped them completely inland, just killed a bunch of cows for the most part. And so everything went wrong. Everything went wrong. It was improvisation. Like Dutch Coder, Brigadier General, 29th Infantry Division, Brigadier General, who went forward and was leading squads to assault bunkers, directing engineers to take out beach obstacles and open paths in the beach exits to get the troops offshore. Yeah, we need to honor people like that, like a platoon leader named Jimmy Monteith, who took it upon himself when almost all of his higher command was killed or wounded. This second lieutenant took his platoon, and together with a brilliant Polish-American immigrant named Strazak as platoon sergeant, they went and did things that you just could not believe they could do given the chaos on that beach. He wound up getting the posthumous Medal of Honor, and his platoon sergeant should have got the Medal of Honor. He got the Distinguished Service Cross. Anyway, this story's like that all over the place, all over the place. The paratroopers landed in the wrong spot. You know, they were dropped miles from an objective. They said, okay, we can't get there in time to do what we're supposed to do, but we can raise scatter hell where we are, and that's what they did. They just started ambushing Germans wherever they could find it and created confusion in the German rear area. And the ones that did land improvised, got together, and made plans on the spot. But what Boyd said about the people who helped to accomplish the logistical miracle, because let's face it, you're not going to put 154,000 men on a beachhead ashore in one day without an extraordinary logistical triumph, and that's exactly what it did. It was the logistics that really won the day that day. They built two artificial harbors because, see, the reason the Germans just knew they were going to have to land at Pas-de-Calais was because there were no usable ports to support a large-scale invasion like that. Not anywhere in the Cotentin Peninsula or around Normandy, nothing. It was just open beach with not that good a harbor to protect against sea-lash storms. They just knew they weren't going to land there. They were going to land at the existing ports on the channel, like Dieppe, Dunkirk, Pas-de-Calais. They knew it was going to come somewhere there because those are ports they could take advantage of. So what did they do? These brilliant people engineered artificial harbors. They built big concrete block houses. They took a bunch of ships out the channel. They sunk them, which they used as anchors to anchor the block houses in place, put together piers leading off the beach so they could offload the ships to get the logistics. It was brilliant. It could not have been done without all that logistical buildup.
Rommel wanted the tanks, the Panzer divisions, closer to the beaches. If he would have done that, they would have really got slaughtered, the Germans, because the air support would have came in and wiped them out.
Not necessarily, because the air support was really a big failure that day, mainly due to conditions that they hadn't anticipated. They used every bomb. Now, some of it was useful in cutting lines of communication to the battlefront, like bridges, railroad cuts, highways. It was very useful for that. But in the immediate battle area, no. The air is part of Operation Neptune. Remember, Operation Overlord was the overall strategic plan. Operation Neptune was the operational plan for the air, ground, and land forces coming ashore. And as far as Operation Neptune was going, the air power didn't contribute as much as the naval gunfire support did. Those swabbies in those tin can destroyers almost running aground on the beach because they couldn't see anything with all smoke and explosion going on. Those tin can sailors and the destroyers close to nice point-blank range, like 500 yards and less, shooting it out with German bunkers who had the infantry pinned down on the beaches. And they did a magnificent job of providing fire cover for those infantry to get ashore. It was dangerous work, but they didn't hesitate. They came in and started slugging it out with those German anti-tank guns and dual-purpose guns in the bunkers.
And the other brilliant naval thing that happened was what the USS Texas did. You know, when she flooded her ballast on her port side, and put the ship in a heavy list so that her guns could reach their targets for aiming. You know?
Yeah.
Who would have thought of that other than the captain of his ship?
Again, improvisation. That was what it was. People who could make plans on the fly when everything went to SH&IT. I mean, you got to remember, those troops were brilliantly trained. They had hard, thorough training. They were trained to a peak of physical fitness. They were well-equipped. They were set for what was happening. So that was the key. Not the fact that the plans weren't so good, but they had prepared their men. They had hardened them to the point where they could do it. Despite the chaos and confusion, they were still able to make plans on the spot because they were hardened through tough, unrelenting training over and over again.
Give them enough equipment to drown them, though. What? Put enough equipment on their backs to drown them. That was a blooper, huh?
Well, they needed it, though, because they were going to have to make do with what they had for at least 36 to 72 hours. They needed to bring all that gear ashore. Not all of it. Some of it was not really that useful, but they had no way of knowing. They needed the gas masks. They just knew the Germans were going to use gas on the beaches. They just knew it. But Hitler was so afraid of chemical warfare, having been blinded himself by a gas attack in the last weeks of the war, he really had an aversion to using chemical weapons because they knew the Allies would respond in return. They had nerve gas. Nobody else had nerve gas. The Germans had developed nerve gas. The Allies didn't even know the Germans had nerve gas.
Did they use it?
No, they didn't use it. But the equipment the Allies had at beach was not effective against Tauben, which was what the Germans had developed. Had they used it, it might make a big difference on the battlefield that day.
Oh, my Lord.
The Germans had it, and they had it available.
Oh.
Fortunately, Hitler had an aversion to chemical warfare, having been wounded by it himself in the First World War. He had a strong distaste for it. But again, if you look at all of these things that came together, and another thing, too, and this is something else you guys might want to consider about D-Day. The greatest defeat the German army suffered in World War II was not at Stalingrad. That was a big one, and it was definitely the turning point, put Germany on the strategic defensive for the rest of the war. But the biggest defeat the German army suffered in World War II was Operation Bagration, the destruction of Army Group Center. It was the greatest defeat in World War II. The Soviets destroyed the 4th Panzer Army completely in Byelorussia. Completely destroyed the 4th Panzer Army.
When?
They chopped the 9th, 3rd, and 2nd, the 9th Army, the 3rd Panzer Army, and the 2nd Army to pieces in Belarusia. The German army took 450,000 casualties, dead, wounded, and taken prisoner, and they isolated another 300,000 in a Courland pocket in Estonia and Riga. For the rest of the war, 300,000 German troops were cut off and unable to contribute in any significant way to the German war. And what enabled them to do that was the invasion in Normandy, because the Germans now were fighting on two fronts and had to divert a great number of resources to stop the more imminent danger of the Allies getting to Berlin from the northern part of Europe. So that freed up the Russians to destroy Army Group Center and just blow a huge hole in the German line. And that was on the 22nd of June.
Man, how could they have done that, man? The Army Group Center, what did they have, 500,000 troops?
No, they had over 500,000 troops. It was it was the biggest defeat of the German army in World War II, a destruction of Army Group Center. You might have seen the newsreels where you see hordes of German prisoners being marched to the streets of Moscow. Well, that was about 50 or 60,000 of them who were taken prisoner in Operation Bagration.
Wow. Man,
and what enabled that was the invasion in Normandy.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
It was a 1 month. It was almost a 2-month battle from June to August of 1944, and it may have been the biggest overall battle on the Eastern Front in terms of both personnel and geographical area. 50,000 It was even bigger than Kursk.
So what could he have done then at that point, then, Hitler? What could he have done when they hit the beach of Normandy? I mean, what could he have done to defend it? Was Rommel right or wrong?
Rommel was right. They had to destroy that fight at the water's edge. They had to close with the invasion to neutralize Allied air support to the maximum extent that they could, because the Luftwaffe was out for the count. They had been destroyed during Big Week with the combined bomber offensive that forced them to put their best pilots up in the air to oppose the Allied bombing effort. That enabled them to be prey for the hordes of American fighter pilots that have been well-trained, well-equipped with new aircraft for these Luftwaffe. Some of these German aces were guys who had hundreds of victories, if not dozens. They were probably the best fighter pilots in the world, but they were just outnumbered. Yeah. And they had to go up to take on these bombers, and despite the fact that the bombers were not self-defending, they just couldn't do it by themselves without fighter escort. They did shoot down one hell of a lot of German fighters, at least 3,500. They actually, the bomber crews shot down 3,500 German aircraft along with some very well-trained, what they call Experten, the German aces, these really high-scoring aces that nobody has ever seen before or ever will again. Guys who had 290 victories, 180, 190, 65, 85. That was common in the German Air Force. Guys with that many victories. And those guys were shot down during the combined bomber offensives a big week just before the invasion, where they launched an all-out bomber offensive to force the Luftwaffe into the air to oppose the bomber offensives against strategic targets. And that was really their objective. They were using the bombers as bait to destroy the Luftwaffe, and it was successful because there were only 20 fighter sorties over the entire beach the whole day.
Wow.
And so Rommel knew what they had to do was get down to the beach, and they had to drive and they almost did. At Omaha, if the reserves, the armored reserves that Rommel wanted to be there, because he had a big argument with von Rundstedt, who was the commander-in-chief west, and Rommel was commander-in-chief of the Normandy front, and they had a big argument about where the reserves should be positioned. So Hitler decided to split the difference between the two and said, I'll be the one to decide where they'll go. And so anyway, so Rundstedt couldn't commit them. He wanted them to hold in reserve because he thought Normandy was a feint, and they were going to really come to the pas de Calais. And Rommel knew that was the main invasion. He wanted to commit all the reserves to drive a wedge between Utah Beach and the British beaches, and that way the Panzers could have gone right and left and rolled up the beachheads in both ways, because it was a close-run thing. They didn't have anything to stop a really good armored thrust that could get in close enough to negate Allied naval support and air support. If they'd have been able to get to the beaches and split the beachhead, they could have rolled up each beachhead separately.
Well, Sarge, was the biggest fault of the German army. Was
one of them anyway.
They were not allowed. They were really not allowed to operate freely, to do what had to be done, and improvise. You know, they had to get before a fucking sergeant could move his fucking boys around and shit like that. He damn near had to get permission from his CO. CO had to go to the brigade, and that shit.
Well, actually, Boyd, a lot of people, that's partially true. The German army was hampered at strategic level by Adolf Hitler. He took over running the German army after the failure of the Germans before Moscow in the winter of 1941. He took over the German, but when it came to the tactical level, German commanders had a great deal of latitude in how to accomplish a mission, because the Germans had a thing they called Auftragstaktik, which the United States Army adopted, in which I was trained in. They just called it a different name when I was an NCO at the Army School. But it was the same thing. They adopted it from the German Army. They called it Auftragstaktik, which is mission-oriented tactics. And the German leaders were given a mission. If you're like a mid-level leader, say regimental commander and below, battalion commander, regimental commander, you're given a mission. And you're told, this is what we want you to accomplish. The manner in which you accomplish it is up to you. You ask for what you need. If we got it, we'll give it to you. But you decide the operational plans. You make the planning, and you submit it to us and let us know what you're going to do. And the German commanders at the mid and low level, throughout the war, over and over again, they would take shattered army groups and shattered units, and because of this uniformity of training and doctrine, they were able to mold them into very effective ad hoc combat groups.
Yeah.
And the German army did that almost better than anyone else. Even when they were losing and getting their asses beat, they would take the shattered units and be able to reform them into effective combat units like no other army in the Second World War. And it was basically because of this doctrine they had of Auftragstactik.
Crazy. Crazy, man. Insane.
But I'm telling you, it was a hell of a thing to overcome these guys. Look, because you got to remember, when they didn't train for hedgerow fighting. Now, yeah, they were trained to get off the beach, but they didn't train for hedgerow fighting because they figured out to give away the game to the Germans the way they were going to land. So they didn't make a big deal out of fighting through the hedge. They had to learn, because fighting in the hedgerows was like fighting in a European jungle. You had all of these farmlands in Normandy, and over hundreds of years, the farmers would delineate the boundaries of their land by allowing these big shrubs and trees just grow into walls with intermixed roots and high lanes. The roads were like sunken lanes with
but it
hedges
didn't hold
on
them up
both
that
sides.
long. Didn't hold them up too long.
Oh, yes, it did.
You
now,
think
the Germans were able. No, yes, it did. In fact, NATO. I know this because I was trained in this when I was in NATO, waiting for the Warsaw Pact to invade us through the Fill the Gap. They told us the model we are using to fight the Russians is the same model the Germans were using in the hedgerows of Normandy. The way they used the Norman landscape to their advantage. You got to remember, they didn't have air support. For all practical purposes, they had the German soldiers had a joke. If you see a camouflage-colored airplane, it's a British plane. If you see a silver-covered one, an American plane. If you don't see it, it's a German plane. That was a joke, because the Luftwaffe was non-existent. And everywhere they looked, they had to look up in the sky to see where we're going to be pounded by Allied fighter bombers, the P-47s and P-51s and P-38s were all over the place, raining down death and destruction. And there was no effective German air opposition to it.
And they had air superiority in the beginning.
Every time you look around, German soldiers got to look up in the air. Here comes an Allied aircraft either bombing and or strafing them. And they got to go running high and take cover in the ditch.
Yeah.
The German soldiers were going crazy with this sort of thing.
I don't know. It makes no sense.
So what I'm saying is what they did was, here's how they compensated for it. They learned how to fight in the hedgerows. They knew what they would do is take two sides of the hedgerows. They set up a couple of MG-42s in each corner of the hedgerows with their rapid firing 1,200 rounds a minute. Then they would mine the entrance to the front, and they would wait for the Allies to come in there. When the Allies started to try to get through because they had exposed their tanks to drive up over the hedgerows, they'd hit them in the belly with a Panzerfaust or some anti-tank rocket of some sort. Meanwhile, the infantry tried to come through. They'd be cut down in the crossfire of the machine gun. They were expert at this defense in the Normandy. It was tough. You ask any veteran of the fighting in the hedgerows, he'll tell you it was a nightmare.
And if I'm not mistaken, we lost more guys in the hedgerow than we did on the beaches when they were exposed.
Absolutely.
Really?
I mean, the turnover in Allied infantry. Look, you got to remember, they talk about how World War II, the casualty rate overall of the United States Army was low. That is not true for the units at the sharp end, especially the infantry. Infantry units in the Normandy fighting had over 100% casualties, and that was not atypical. I'm talking about the battalion level. They would have 100%, a complete turnover of the roster. It was grueling. Now, when they broke through the hedgerows and they broke out at San Lo in Operation Cobra, where they got all this bomber support. Every heavy bomber in Europe they could spare, they got together for the breakout at San Lo. There was the 29th Division, the 30th Division, the 1st Infantry Division, and the 28th Division. And they lined up ready to break through on this crossroads, the key crossroads at Sarnlow. All the roads led to Brittany, where Patton could run wild when they committed the Third Army. And they wanted to break. There was the first army that had to do the breakthrough at Sarnlow. And
we lost 500 men there due to friendly fire from the bombers. Dropping their
the bombing and the bombing.
Oh my Lord!
But even though hundreds were killed on 2 days by 2 erratic bombing efforts, that bombing wiped out the Panzer Division. And they said the bombing was so intense. It was such a heavy. They used something like 3,000 heavy bombers. We're not talking about fighter bombs. We're talking about B-24s and B-17. And there were thousands of them dropping their bomb load in a very concentrated area, like 8,000 pounds of bombs average on each of these bombers, and they're bombing in a very concentrated area. They said that German infantrymen were driven mad by the bombing, the ones that survived and weren't blown to smithereens. The Panzer Division was just wiped out, and it was the best armored organization in Normandy. Others were equally devastated, and that enabled them to break through at Sarnlow and open a way for Patton to run wild in Brittany like the cavalryman that he was. And then you had the German 7th Army rolled up in the Falaise Gap, which Montgomery and the Poles failed to close in time, so about 50,000 of them got away to go across the Rhine. But still, the 7th Army was almost completely destroyed in Normandy. German 7th Army.
Well, on that right there, yeah, you're right. I mean, but one question I want to ask you, Sarge. Where the hell is his Navy at this whole time, the Mediterranean? They left that totally exposed. I mean, I know the Italians were no match, obviously. They were just no match at all. And then 41 and 42 and 43. I mean, where were the Germans? And where were
there was a bitter fight in the Mediterranean for control of the Mediterranean. I mean, the Royal Navy was taking the brunt of that.
Sarge? How'd they get
evacuated? We got to remember, the Royal Navy was doing most of the heavy lifting during that period in the Mediterranean. They were fighting,
and we were not involved yet.
Well, we were involved, but elsewhere. It was mainly on the North Atlantic and the North Atlantic convoys getting all the supplies across to England and fighting the U-boats.
Yeah.
That's where the Navy and the European theater was prior to 1944.
It was the Royal Navy that was standing alone before 41.
Oh, obviously, yes, of course. And they were fighting the Italians and the Germans. And particularly in the Mediterranean, Joe. So what you're saying is not true. They were heavily engaged in the You know Lord Mountbatten, don't you? That's where his destroyer got sunk, and he had to swim in the sea after his destroyer got sunk.
Well, what kind of battle fight did the Italians put up? I heard they were no match at all. They had
a decent Navy. No, the Navy had a pretty decent. I mean, it wasn't as great, but it was decent. They had a well-trained, well-equipped, modern Navy. The Italians had a decent Navy.
It's just weird, you know.
At Cape Matabon, I think Matabon, I believe it was, the Royal Navy had a real slugfest with the Italian Navy, and the Italians acquitted themselves well, even though they were defeated.
Yeah, but Sarge, the thing that gets me though is the French Navy. It's just very strange how the seas played out, because you figure you had the French Navy. They were obsolete, basically.
No, that's not true. That's not true. They had a very up-to-date Navy.
I thought they burned most of their ships, I thought.
Yeah, look, the Germans the Germans did not need a naval force to defeat France. That was it. See, the Navy was largely neutralized by the Blitzkrieg. But the Navy was neutralized by the Blitzkrieg. And you got to remember, when the Germans occupied the northern part of France, remember, Vichy was in the southern part, the Vichy French. And the Vichy French, the British were worried that Vichy would turn over that modern, well-equipped French naval fleet to the Germans with what they had at Toulon. So what did Churchill do? He sent the British to Toulon to destroy the French fleet so the Germans wouldn't get their hands on it, because they needed those ships for their surface navy. And guess what? Something like 3,000 French sailors were killed And the French never did really forgive the British for that, even though they were Vichy and somewhat allied with the Germans.
Yeah. Well,
The British never forgave Churchill for that.
So you're telling me if the Germans were able to get a hold on...
The French never forgave Churchill for that.
Hang on. So you're telling me that if the Germans were able to get a hold of the French fleet, that the whole entire war could have had a different outcome?
Well, it would certainly been different. I don't know how much different, but it would certainly have been considerably different. Because you got to remember, Vichy, when the Americans invaded North Africa in November of 1942, the French rapidly capitulated. I mean, they put up a fairly stiff fight at Oran and Algiers and Morocco, but it was only for 1 or 2 days, and then they surrendered and they joined the Allied war effort. And that's when the Germans occupied the rest of France. They called that Operation Axis, and they moved in real quick, and they dominated all of Vichy. And that's when the Germans were moving to seize what was left of the Vichy French fleet, and the British weren't going to have that. They just were not going to risk that possibility of the German surface fleet becoming that much stronger, because contrary to what you said, Joe, their Navy was not obsolete. Those were very capable, modern warships for the most part.
Okay, all right. Well, I stand correct.
Here's the other thing, Joe, is, it would have changed the war and the way it would have been fought, but I don't think it would have changed the ultimate outcome.
No.
But then again, if you look, if you just do the what ifs, what if we didn't get in on the beaches on Normandy? What if the Germans had knocked us back off the beach? Well, we would have had to have tried again.
There's a method to my madness here.
Probably would have taken another 2 years to marshal that kind of force. It would probably, to build up that size force again, would have probably taken another 2 years. In the meantime, the question is, would the German army then be able to turn all its attention to the Soviets in the east instead of having to fight on two fronts? Would they have been able to hold the Russians, even push them back east of the Bug River in Poland? Because you got to remember, what enabled the Soviets to break out was a destruction of Army Group Center. And Army Group Center was destroyed. The door was open to Galicia and Central Europe. So I think, the American invasion was as much to prevent the westward advance of the Soviet Union as it was to destroy the German army.
Yeah, okay.
That's kind of ironic in a lot of ways, but that is a fact.
Well, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we're watching history replay itself. We're in a way, we're not taking advantage of situations that we should be taking advantage as a people here in America, and we're going to watch the same fall when we could easily fall into the same trap of tyranny and destruction and lose vital resources, or even it's like gas prices. They're selling off all our reserves. Getting rid of all our reserves, our strategic reserves. We need those, Sarge, those strategic reserves. If anything happens, we're screwed.
Not with some corrupt, crass politicians got to get a few cheap votes with strategic reserve that cannot in any way impact oil prices. That strategic reserve is intended for the emergency use of the United States government, and particularly its armed forces. That's what it's for. Not to lower the cost of oil.
I know.
Donald Trump had refilled the damn thing and had it ready for the purpose it was intended for.
I know. But they're draining them. And we
and
have
it ain't
nothing
that
set
much
up
anyway.
right away.
Well, you realize it ain't that much anyway. It's about 2 weeks' worth of gasoline for the United States at its normal usage, if that's all you have.
Yeah, but there's supposed to be enough, Sarge, for us to get online and produce our own. There's supposed to be enough on the side so that we get enough time to get online.
To keep the armed forces running, which is a lot smaller group of vehicles and people, to keep the armed forces running in whatever operations it needs to do. That's the main reason for it, not to help the civilian sector.
Well, infrastructure too. You know, we have to have some sort of infrastructure running, going.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
the free reserve is too damn tiny. It's tiny relative to what the United States need as far as the petroleum stuff. It is tiny, but it's more than good enough for the armed forces.
You know, when they first developed it, it wasn't. You know, that's what I'm trying to get to the point here. It needs to be revamped and redone.
It's you know. Joe, I mean, one of the remarkable things that I just learned about within the last few years is the pipeline they put across the English Channel for D-Day.
Called
you
it
know,
Pluto.
they
pipeline under the ocean. It was called Pluto. Pipeline under the ocean.
I didn't know this.
And that was probably, I think that was a 4-inch or 6-inch line that they put in from England to Normandy Beachhead to supply vehicles with fuel.
Under the water.
Really?
Just
under the water.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really near large enough to do that for the fuel that we were consuming at that time. And really needed. But that was all we had at the time. And I think after the beachhead,
I got a bunch of callers want to get in here. Sorry.
Yeah, after the beachhead was established, it wasn't good enough once they broke out, but it was good enough for operations in and around the beachhead area. That was the problem. That's why they needed the Red Ball Express, because one of the harbor or the Mulberry harbors was destroyed in a storm, and the other one couldn't quite keep up with the need for supply, even though it was still working in the one in the British sector was wrecked. Or the one in the American sector.
All right, sorry. Let me bring these guys on.
Still working.
Let me bring these guys on. I've been waiting a while. Go ahead, 314 first, and then I'll go private caller, and then 214. Go ahead.
Look, just the way you talked about Germany. Germany was a well-respected, formidable foe. Just listen to what we talked about. It took the world to defeat it. And who was it saying that Putin was not allowed to the 80-year celebration? Was that the French leader?
Yeah, that was Macron.
Yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit. Russia has been hampered by the French going back to the 1812 with that damn Napoleon. They played a major part in the turnaround of Germany. I have very little respect for France. And the Italians couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag, just like the Spain. Hey,
Bianchi, who was it that Sir Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, relied upon at Waterloo to save the day at the end of the day? Gerhard Blucher, the Prussian. If his supporters hadn't got there when they said they were supposed to get there, then Wellesley and the British and the Belgians might have lost the Battle of Waterloo, but it was the timely arrival of the Prussians, who had already been defeated when Napoleon kind of cut them in half at Chartres-Blanc. Napoleon, it kind of chopped up the Prussians, and they had to retreat and regroup, and they did. And they marched on to Wellington as they promised they would do, and arrived just in time to catch the French in the flank when they were about to overrun the farm at Amre Bois. So it was the Prussians that pulled the British chestnut out of the fire in 1815.
Yeah, and you know another thing. One of the reasons why they couldn't get the craters in front of the bunkers because Germans had teetered those small dirigibles in the flight path off of cables. So airplanes couldn't come in front. They'd go out into the cockpit.
Yep, I saw that. Yep.
Well, actually, the barrage balloons are really intended to stop the low-level fighter bombers. The heavy bombers that were supposed to crater the beaches were hitting them from high altitude, so they wouldn't have been impeded by the barrage balloons that were there. And the Allies had come in with the barrage balloons intending to keep them from the anticipated German fighter effort, whatever it was, because they were the fighter bombers had to come in at low level, and maybe the medium bombers, like the Ju-88, the Do-17, and the Me-1110, they were like medium to low altitude fighters, and those aircraft would be affected by the barrage balloon. But the bombers that were cratering the beaches, they were hitting from over 10,000 feet, about 10,000 feet, 8 to 10,000 feet, so they weren't affected by any of the barrage balloons. They just were afraid because of all the dust and smoke raised by the naval gunfire. Remember, they were using a northern bomb sight. They had to see the target. They relied on clear weather to be able to see the target. They held us obscured beaches by all the smoke and dust and everything else raised up by the naval bombardment, and they delayed the drop because they were afraid they would drop it on their landing craft or the ships out at sea. And they miscalculated, and they dropped too far inland.
Sarge, let me bring on a private caller here. Private caller, go ahead. You're on two, because I got 2 more to wait, too.
Greetings, folks. You know who this is. Sarge, you are hereby. Oh, yeah. You are hereby to report to Shabaka's Black Experience Enhanced at 1100 hours tomorrow Eastern Time. Now, it's very interesting that you guys are talking about the Red Ball Express. One factor that you're forgetting is Colonel Benjamin O. Davis Jr. of the Tuskegee Airmen. The German Luftwaffe were no match for them. They never lost a single battle.
Shabaka, stop right there now.
That's a fact.
Stop right there, Shabaka. I hate to tell you this.
Hold it, I'm not done yet, Sarge.
The 332nd was with the 15th Air Force in the Mediterranean. They were not there for Operation Overlord.
All right, Sarge, finish his point, then you can correct him. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. And then, that was under the command of Colonel Benjamin O. Davis Jr., the Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Ball Express, that supplied all the lines, to the white troops up there in the Battle of the Bulge, or on the invasion as well, too. Not to mention all the black soldiers that made the ultimate sacrifice as well, too. Then not to mention the fact where you had the Black Rosie the Riveters over there in the defense plants over there in the Bay Area as well, too, in Richmond, California. Then not to mention, the explosion at Port Chicago where a lot of black GIs were killed, handling munitions. It's because the white officers didn't want to do it. Now, this isn't hatred. This is merely historical.
No, that's not true, Shabaka. Come on.
Oh, yes, it is true. Okay, do you have to get Lerone Bennett again? Do I have to get Lerone Bennett Jr. again?
No, you got to get Lerone Bennett again. Sarge knows what happened. He looked into this very thoroughly, the Port Chicago Mutiny. I've read 3 books on the issue, and the white officers got blown up too because they were inept, perhaps, but not because they weren't there directing and supervising their men.
Sarge, the fact of the matter is it was hazardous duty, and they didn't split the hazard equally, Sarge, is my point.
Shabaka, come on now.
Okay, well, I'm hearing 3 people talking to me. Who's talking to me?
Go ahead, Boyd. You can have him.
Hey, Shabaka, this is Boyd. I was
telling
you,
how you
doing? I'm doing good. I hope things are progressing from last night. Was it last night's show or the night before show?
It was the night before last, so we'll be continuing that discussion tomorrow.
Yeah. Anyway, Shabaka.
Okay, go ahead.
We're not talking about white soldiers. We're not talking about black soldiers. We're talking about the men dressed in green.
Okay, now I appreciate. Hold on a second now.
Everybody,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Everybody was dressed in green, except for the Navy. They were dressed in blue. But those are the people that we're talking about. We're not talking about white soldiers. We're not talking about black soldiers. We're not talking about white or black airmen or anything. We're talking about the whole fucking army, because if nobody did their job to the best of their ability, none of us would. We wouldn't have won. I mean, there was.
Okay.
Earlier today, I was talking about some of the guys that were in the British Navy that were on super small boats that went out on June the 4th in boats that were not designed to be in the waters that came up during the weather, and their job, their one job, okay, was to open up channels in the minefield the Germans had. Those guys never got shot at or anything. But had those guys not been there and directed the invasion fleet through the channels that they had opened up for the invasion fleet, none of this would have happened. That's it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't care whether they're British, Canadian, French, American, Polish, everybody that was fighting. We're talking about men, the men in green, the men who were out facing the bullets,
fighting for the flag,
and the men and the men who were supporting those guys.
Okay.
Those guys out facing the bullets could not have done it without their support.
Yeah, and Chewbacca, I would like to pay homage.
Hang on, guys. I got another caller here, guys. Go ahead. Finish your point real quick.
Okay, please let me finish. Okay, please let me finish.
You go first, Chewbacca. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, now, what about the levels of multiple discrimination, such as Isaac Woodard, who was one, soldiers that came back into the South from World War II that were beaten, that were pulverized, okay, down in Louisiana, okay, also too down there in Georgia with Isaac Woodard and even Joe Louis, I believe, at that time, he came out and supported Mr. Woodard because he had just got discharged from Fort Benning, Georgia, down there in the great state of Georgia, Peach State.
Yep.
So
segregation today, segregation tomorrow. Yep.
Okay. Chewbacca,
let me finish. Please let me finish,
Chewbacca, I know you like to react. Every grievance you can bring up about the United States. But look, Chewbacca, we're talking about the men who made the sacrifice on D-Day, June 6, 1944. And one of them, Chewbacca, I'm going to pay homage to this black man on Omaha Beach on 6 June 1944. His name was Waverly Wilson. He was a combat medic from Philadelphia. He treated wounded soldiers, white, mostly white, but some black too, under heavy fire despite his own wounds. They are giving him credit for saving 200 soldiers' lives or treating them when they had been badly wounded. So let's give credit to him and every man of every race who did what they did on D-Day to contribute to the victory.
Okay. And on top of that there, too, and what about how Isaac Woodard was battered down there? And then also, too, not to mention the fact that
he wasn't on Normandy.
Oh, man, don't want to give a black man credit for shit, do you? Don't want to give a black man credit for nothing, huh?
Chewbacca,
I just gave a black man credit who was on Omaha Beach on the 6th of June. Did you hear me just a second ago?
Okay, but hold on, Sarge. Don't blow the gas to Sarge. We need you for duty tomorrow. Now, also, too, what about His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie?
Cut him off, Joe. Cut him off.
Chewbacca.
Bam.
Time out, everybody. Time out. I got two other callers here. All right, come on. All right, 214. Go ahead.
Which is good, Slayer. I'm just listening to the debacle there.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Look, I'm gonna give credit to every soldier of every race that there that day.
If I may,
hang on, Gunslinger.
Chewbacca, if I may, you are dishonoring the black soldiers who fought in World War II. You are absolutely, positively dishonoring them. They wore the same green uniforms as the white soldiers out there.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
The Red Ball, let me say this. The Red Ball Express, the drivers, and most of the people in the Red Ball Express who were extremely important to the whole fucking war.
Boy, they didn't win the war, though, for us. They fought, yes, but they didn't win the war. No way.
Bullshit.
No way.
They kept the goddamn bullshit. Joe.
No way.
Joe, I'll tell you
Joe,
what.
what did Patton say, Joe? Patton said my men can eat their belt, but my tanks got to have gas. It was the red ball, the 320th, that got them there, along with their white cop. 2/3 of them were black drivers, but 1/3 of them were white drivers too. All of them got that stuff up there.
Sorry, they didn't win the war, though.
You can take that. You can take that statement. You can take that statement you just made, Joe, and shove it up your ass.
You're going to tell me,
those boys up front, those guys up front would not have been able to continue.
Up front, they were on the front lines. It was all blacks, right? They stormed the beaches of Normandy.
No.
They rode the trucks all the way to Berlin.
Let's keep everything in context. Hold on. Now, let's not make it a. Look, we don't need to hate on anybody here. These all contribute to victory. Logistics, like I pointed out earlier in my presentation when I talked about D-Day early on. What did I say? What's as crucial, if not more so, than the heroism of the men who stormed the bunkers. It was logistics effort that enabled them to keep going. So the logistics effort and the combat effort had to go hand in hand. Like Patton said, my men can eat their belts. My tanks got to have gas. And he needed the quartermasters and the truck drivers to get it there, or the tanks couldn't advance. They were nothing more than immobile pillboxes without gas.
Sarge, were there any frog teams that were black in World War II?
There were no black combat units on any of the beaches on June 6th.
I was getting to that point.
Let's make that clear, too.
Okay.
Let's tell the truth.
Okay.
So,
boy, what are you talking about? They won the war.
You had a tank. You had
logistics.
You had a black tank crew that remained in battle longer than any other. Which one was that, Sarge? About
that was the 761st, and they were committed to battle in about late August of 1944, and they spent more time in continuous frontline unit than any other independent tank battalion in the European theater in World War II. 183 straight days on the front line without release.
If 182 days of the other. Come on.
Hey, listen.
No, without relief, are you kidding? That is a hell of a record.
If those guys up front were not provided with fuel, ammunition, and food, and the other equipment that they needed, they would have lost. They would have been killed and captured. They would have run out of ammo.
Another thing, Joe Gibson, your atomic bomb would have never went no place if it hadn't been for the 20-some-odd black scientists, nuclear physicists, and mechanical engineers that helped put that into effect.
You're right, Bianchi. You're right.
Well, look, Joe. Look. I understand. I was watching one show one time, and a guy said, and nobody takes a back seat in their admiration to the 332nd Fighter Group, which was the overall component of the Tuskegee Airmen.
I'm not saying they weren't heroes.
The 99th Pursuit Squadron, and they got 3 more fighter squadrons, and they became the 332nd Fighter Group. Nobody takes a back seat in their admiration better than me. But I heard this one guy in his one documentary say, if the 332nd hadn't been there, they might have lost the war. There wasn't any single fighter group that won the war by itself. Not a white one, not a black one. That's just a fact.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make.
They all contributed
hey, Kat,
to the
Kat's
victory.
on here, guys. I got Kat been trying to speak now for a while. Go ahead, Kat.
Well, actually, you brought Gunslinger on before me, and he was trying to speak before he was interrupted.
I know he was. I know. Sorry, Gunslinger. I know.
Well, let him
but
go ahead.
Gunslinger, you want to speak, or Kat? One of you two. One or the other. Go ahead.
Okay, he
still there.
I'll
all right,
speak.
Go ahead, Kat.
Well, apparently, some people can call into your show and talk uninterrupted. But Shabaka comes on and is trying to make a point, and he's immediately shouted over and put down. And I
saw that.
I was trying to hear what he had to say and then respond to it, because the best way to learn anything is to hear what the other person is saying, and whether or not you agree with it, try to understand where he's coming from. So I was enjoying listening to Shabaka, and I don't know why he was shouted down so badly. I think that was very rude, and I was taught to listen and to analyze what other people are saying before I open my mouth and tell everything that I know, which I don't want to do. But I think that it's your responsibility, Joe, to handle that as a host. And I'd just like to say one more thing, and I won't bore you with everything that I know, but my father served in World War II, and he retired from the military in 1952, and 10 years later, he was recalled back into the military. He was forced back into the military, and he went to Vietnam 3 times, and
wow,
that killed him. Yeah, and so when you talk about, I mean, even though D-Day was a very significant day and a huge victory, everything that happened prior to D-Day was important to talk about, because without the heroic sacrifices and of even like the Tuskegee Airmen and anyone else in the military, I mean, everything was like a building block. World War II was like building blocks. It wasn't just one thing that happened. So, what I'm
I agree with that. I agree with that, but somebody was saying like, well, without the blacks, we would have lost the whole war. Now come on, that's a little, I mean, you can't make that statement. I mean, yes, they contributed, but you can't say the whole war would have lost if the blacks got shut down.
I think that he should be allowed to talk about it, and we should talk about things that happened in this country after the war was over. Well, whereas we, praised the D-Day today, when those soldiers came home, they weren't treated that good.
No, they were spit on, yeah.
Well, no, they got a parade and everything when they came home, but there was definitely a turning against the military after they came home and the war was over. So that's all I have to say. I won't bore you with everything that I know. I'm being
what about Vietnam?
It's one thing to make mention, but he's trying to put people in places that they were not. And that's really deplorable, because we see that elsewhere in history.
That's not the point.
For somebody who's ignorant,
a person
let me
should be
finish saying what I'm saying. Now you cut me off.
And then they should be allowed to say what they have to say, and then you respond to it, not just shout over them. Because sometimes your listener wants to hear what they say. We're disagreeing, too, with them, and maybe that would spur someone else to call in and talk instead of the show being monopolized by one person. I'm putting myself on mute now.
I think it's
go ahead, Bianca.
Being that they're going to usually give a lecture in a historical biography of their life, I think they should be corrected at the point where they make the mistake or put out something that is untrue, because if you let them go on, everybody be asleep.
Hey, let me interrupt here just one moment. Gentlemen, ladies, I'm going to have to drop off of here. I have a meeting that I need to go to tonight, and it's been fun. It's been real, but I don't know if it's been real fun. But, thanks for putting on the show. Thanks for honoring the troops. No matter what color their skin happens to be, they all wore green, except for the fucking Navy. They wore blue, But everybody did their part, and without them doing their part, we would never have won. That's all I have
true,
to say.
though. That's a blanket statement, though. You can't make that statement all the time.
That is true, Joe. That is true, because it was a collective effort. It did take everybody that had a role.
What if the blacks weren't there? You're saying now we could not have won World War II? The blacks just say hypothetically none of them were there.
That's not what we're saying either. What we're saying is everyone who did participate, no matter how they whether they were drafted, whether they enlisted, if they did their duty, all of them had a role contributing to victory. It's just a fact. The guys at Fort Chicago, women, now, hold on now. The guys at Fort Chicago that Chewbacca mentioned, who were mainly black stevedore in the Navy, were critical in getting ammunition and other supplies to the troops fighting in the Pacific. They had to do it in order for those troops to win the war there. they did contribute to the victory. The problem is because of identity politics today, everybody wants to distort everything and highlight the grievances. This is a day to commemorate those who served on D6, specifically in the Northwest Theater of Operations on 6 June 1944. I welcome the conversation about the discrimination and the race riots and the maltreatment, because I know about that too. I'd love to have that discussion. But today, I'd like to stick with June 6th and everything related to it.
Okay.
That's what
I just know it's real quick. I just want to make this quick comment. Sorry. Okay. All right, go ahead.
The sad thing about it, Joe Gibson, is that blacks was left out of the commentary of history. Like I told you about the over 20-some-odd black scientists that even Einstein had corresponded back and forth with Lord Quarterman and agreed upon on his theories. Hey, you probably wouldn't have had an atomic weapon if it wasn't for those that was at Names Research there in Tennessee.
Now, is that true?
Now.
That's 100% accurate? Or are you being sarcastic?
I'm not being sarcastic. It's the fact that whatever method of education you came up through, you was miseducated, Joe.
Okay, now listen. Now check this out, right? I noticed that Boyd always likes to count. I notice he does it on Shabaka's show. He'll lick the boots, though. You know, he won't stand up. Like, you know, if they say, I remember he apologized for saying something one time. I forgot what it was, a phrase. Like, I'm sorry, I'm a white guy. I'm not allowed to say that. I remember him saying that. That's the only reason why I check him sometimes. Cause I notice he'll do that. He'll cower down. Like, why can't you say that? They're saying it. Why can't you say that? Because you're white, you can't say that? Get the hell out of here, man. You can say everything that they say just as well, as just as good, if not better. What the hell's the difference? I don't like that.
Yeah, but you can't say that blacks was left out of the commentary of history.
Not today, you can't. In fact, they're even exerting blacks in the places where they never were. And that's the problem.
I know.
I got into this thing about World War II because my father was an infantryman in World War II. And everything I saw about World War II, I didn't see any black soldiers. I know my father got a Purple Heart, he got a Bronze Star, he got the European thing, he got combat infantry badge, all this other stuff. And what is his story? That's why I started looking to find out what black soldiers did in World War II. So now I think I got a pretty complete picture. But what I'm resenting now, instead of telling the truth and showing it in its historical context properly and giving proper honor where it is due, now they got to magnify into the things that just weren't true.
Okay.
Before long,
I agree
in
with 10
or 20 years, you're going to have the whole 1st Infantry Division that assaulted Omaha Beach was all black soldiers.
Yep,
hey,
I agree with that, Sarge.
Who was Hans Muck? I may be pronouncing his name, his last name.
He was a Panzer commander, and in the, I believe, in the 21st Panzer Army Group. He was a German Panzer commander.
Joe Hitler had
I think Gunslinger might want to say something,
too.
Guys.
Hans von Luke. Hans von
Guys,
Luke.
I think Gunslinger wants to say something. Gunslinger, hang on. Come on, Boyd, hang on. Gunslinger's been waiting. Gunslinger, you want to say something? I thought I heard him. I'm trying to get him in there if he was.
Listen, guys. Listen. One thing. I'm leaving the conversation and leaving the show, and all I want to say is God bless the boys who never came home.
Amen.
Okay. Thank you. Amen. That's good. Okay. Nothing wrong with that.
But Joe Gibson, in case you didn't know, that was the blacks that fought with Hitler also.
Did they? I don't know. Did they? I don't know about that now. Did they?
The Germans had racial classifications for people. They drafted into the German army. They called them, they had race, including mulattoes and blacks, the Rhineland bastards. A few hundred of them were drafted into the German army in 1940.
I know Jews were.
Most of them had been discharged from the German army by 1942, but they were drafted and they did serve. I've seen several interviews with some of them who explained how they were treated while they were in the German army before they were discharged. One of them had an Iron Cross second class, and he was telling about his service on the Russian front.
Okay, I did not know that. Okay.
There
Not
weren't
only
many. Now,
that-
don't
not
say
only
a
that-
lot. There were a few.
Not
Okay.
only that, France used Senegalese soldiers, Britain used Ghanaian soldiers. You didn't know that neither, huh?
Yeah, I know France. Yeah, but I know also, like I said, Jews. I know there were 100,000 Jews actually served in the Weimar, right, Sarge?
Jews are white. There's nobody born.
No, they're not. No, they're
Yeah,
not.
Joe,
They're
you got to
Arab.
remember that those mulatto Germans were German citizens and subject to conscription.
Not white.
But then, like I said, after the German army had kind of settled down with its conquest after 1940, they started removing the half Jews and the mulattoes and discharging them from the German army. But they did serve. A few hundred of them did serve in the German army.
Okay, I'll agree with that. Okay, I did not know. I had no idea.
What black tank group was there to liberate the death camps? I can't think of the names.
You got to think about the 761st Tank Battalion, which is an independent tank battalion, and the 784th Tank Destroyer Battalion. I think both of those units were involved in liberating some of the camps.
When those prisoners in the death camp seen those black soldiers, you know what they said? They thought they were looking at
What?
Joe Gibson?
What?
Angels.
Yeah,
Maybe.
He did say that.
I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. I got to take your word for it. I don't know.
Look,
I can only go by what I read and what I think I know.
All I
That's
want
it.
people to do is tell the truth about history as best we can determine what the truth is, however it is. And it's more interesting when you tell the truth.
Yeah, but hang on. To back up Bianchi's point, well, as far as Cat goes, the comment. Cat, Shabaka does this a lot. He'll start off good, but then he'll start going right, and all of a sudden he'll start hitting us with stuff that's just like totally false, and then he reverts right back to the 1500s and the 1300s, way off topic, you know. So that's I think he was trying to say, and that's what Shabaka
we know
does.
how
I think
he
we were
works.
trying
He
to stop.
does it all the
Yeah.
time. He knows what he's doing.
He does do that. He does it purposely too, and he does it very well, quickly. You know.
It's like a shiv, like he's slipping a shiv into your side.
Yeah, you know, and his fantasies. He gets into his fantasies about white men raping black women and everything.
No,
you know,
don't start with that. Don't call back. Start talking about Mandingo.
I know why if you didn't go to his shows, he'd be speaking to an empty room.
Well, I'm gonna be there with him. He knows when I go there with him. Hey, I'm gonna listen to everything he says, and I'm gonna tell him exactly what I know about it or don't know about it. I don't know anything about that. But I want to tell him today about a movie I know he's loved to see. He probably ain't seen it, but he loves it. I just saw it the other day. I thought it was pretty damn good myself. It's a movie called Burn. It stars Marlon Brando and another pretty good black actor. I can't think of his name. He used to be fairly well known in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And the movie's called Burn, and it's about a freebooter mercenary named William Walker, who was actually namesake after a genuine guy who actually did this sort of thing. He would go around as a mercenary contractor, starting up wars for colonial corporate interests to take over islands that were, slave islands. Right.
Yeah,
well, it's a good movie. You haven't seen it. I was going to tell Shabaka to watch it because it really is pretty thoughtful and well done, even though it's done from a left-wing point of view. It's not a scream.
I think this is Tave, guys. Tave 330.
What's going on, guys? I want to ask you a question real quick. You know who Claudia Sheinbaum is?
Yes.
No.
The new president of Mexico.
Trouble. We are in trouble. You just had the elections in Mexico. She was elected after 30 different people that were running are dead. All of them dead.
No way.
She's Jewish Mexican. She's Jewish Mexican, and Israel and Mossad just parked their asses on our border.
Wait a second.
Wow.
Wait a second.
30
Can I
people
make
died
a comment
in that
on
election.
that?
Hang on, Dave. Cat wants to reply. Go ahead.
Okay, the people that were killed in Mexico that he's referring to were not running for the president of Mexico. There's over 1,000 seats that were up for election or re-election, and across Mexico, they were not.
What
all
was this
running.
lady born at? Where was she born
can
at?
I finish? She was born
Hang
in
on,
Mexico.
she's trying to finish.
See, this is what
Okay,
I'm
I just
talking
wanna
about.
get-
I talk and everybody has to fucking talk over me. I don't get it. Okay. There were not 30 or 50 some people running for the president. They were running for other elections all across Mexico. And she is a second generation Jew. That is so true. But she's not a practicing Jew. So
She wears a star
stays
rim pad around her neck.
All right. Fuck it.
Well, my point is this. She was a Mexican. Now, she may be religious, Jewish, or Judaism, but she's a Mexican. There's no biological people born Jew, nor Catholic, nor Protestant, nor whatever.
Okay.
She is a Mexican citizen. Let's get that straight. She is a Mexican citizen at birth.
She's also part of the WEF.
And also, that would make Obama a British subject.
He was.
Not a Kenyan.
He was.
So is he Kenyan or is he a British subject? Or is he an American black?
Hey, I'll tell you how this works out, folks. Did you see this article the other day that just came out that the State Department says that dual citizenship Ukrainian Americans who are stuck in Ukraine and are being drafted in the Ukrainian army are subject to the national laws of Ukraine since they're there, and Ukraine says they are Ukrainian citizens, and Ukraine is taking them into the Ukrainian army whether they want to go there or not.
I know I've seen it.
And they're also U.S. citizens.
76 years old, I think he was 76 or something that was involved in that was drafted. You got to be shitting me.
No, I'm not kidding. They got a 55-year-old guy who's Ukrainian-American citizen. He's got both citizenships. He was in Mexico, Ukraine, visiting his relatives, and they conscripted him. They caught him on the street and dragged him off to be drafted in the Ukrainian army. He's in the Ukrainian army right now, and they're registering a protest to the American embassy. The American embassy is saying right now we can't do anything about it because Ukraine says he's a Ukrainian citizen, and under their laws, he's subject to conscription.
Really?
You know what that means, Sarge?
That's right.
You know what that means? Don't have dual citizenship.
That's what I say all the time.
Goddamn right.
That's why anybody who's born a citizen of another country cannot be a natural-born citizen for that reason and that reason alone. And
I
it's
agree with
a citizen here if you want, but you have to denounce the other one. 100%.
Here's what they said. Here's what the U.S. Embassy. Here's what the U.S. Embassy in Kiev said. Now, this is the U.S. Embassy saying this shit, not me. It says here, the U.S. made this statement. Ukrainian law does not recognize dual citizenship. The United States Ukrainian dual citizens are therefore treated solely as Ukrainian citizens while in Ukraine and are subject to the rights and obligations of Ukrainian citizens. We are the same way about our citizenship if your ass is in our country. We do exactly the same thing they just did.
Right. And you have to know that when you get that other passport. You have to know that. If you haven't read the fine print, you're to blame yourself.
You better.
I'm telling
you.
And
this is what they also said. They also said, quote, if you are not currently in Ukraine, we strongly recommend against all travel to Ukraine by United States citizens males aged 18 to 60 who also have Ukrainian citizenship or a claim Ukrainian citizenship and who do not wish to stay in Ukraine indefinitely. Just keep that in mind, folks.
Well, it was a time if you sought citizenship in another country, the State Department you would move to denounce yours in the United States. And so all this is political and a bunch of bull crap.
Yeah. Bam. That's why anybody who tries to tell me somebody born a citizen of another country like Obama was, like Kamala Harris was, like all these other people who are running for president and vice president are, is a natural-born citizen, I say to you, you're full of shit. Go read what the State Department just said.
But, you know, here's another thing. Yeah, we celebrate D-Day, and we celebrate December the 7th. But your problem today is what's going on in America today. I'm saying that Russia is not an enemy of the United States. I don't think. I think one of your enemies is sitting over there in the Mideast called Israel, and that Zionist government. Just look what they do behind your back.
1,000%. You are dead on
Look
with
what
that,
they do
Bianchi.
behind your back. That's your enemy.
No.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's a fact.
What are we going to do
I
about
don't
it?
think you know what really is? I don't think there's anybody in this world, as far as the people go, the general population, excluding government, if you put us all on the same island, we could probably all get along until politics start. Those are the enemy. They are creating a worldwide war through politics because they want power. That's all it is. The people, I
They
don't
want
hate
to
any
take
Chinese
down
people.
the last. They want to take down the last shining light of liberty, and that's the United States as it was originally found. What it has evolved into, shall I say, devolved into today, is not what it should have been. It was meant to be. And if you don't do something about now, D-Day, December the 7th, Guadalcanal, all the rest of them would have been for naught.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Well, when
that's
the
true.
Romans took on Christianity full bore, and the Jews hated that.
Crazy.
So now that the West is deemed the Western Roman Empire, basically,
What did he say?
them, the West is being basically deemed the Roman Empire, which is hated by the Jewish sect or the Ashkenazi sect, and have waged war against the West and Edom and Esau, and the Battle of Magog and Gog. They're for self-fulfilling prophecy. Until they conquer America, the West, that's the war. That is the goal. That is the trophy. That is the cherry on top.
That's crazy.
It's biblical proof, and it's already happening. It's insanity to sit here and listen to someone that claims to be a Christian and doesn't even know what Christ means.
Why don't you stop talking over him, Cat?
Right. Oh,
okay, but he's insane. Y'all are listening to an insane
That's right.
person.
And you are too.
If you think Israel is our enemy, you're crazy.
Yeah, well, they're the enemy. They're the enemy, 100%.
They are our enemy. Why did they try to sterilize Ethiopian women when they came back to the place? Huh? Is that not evil?
Who did that?
They tried to sterilize them and get this, and hang on to your pain nerves. They tried to recircumcise the Ethiopian men. If that ain't evil, what do you call it? It's demonic.
When did this happen?
You don't do your research.
No, you don't.
I've never heard of this before.
Has anybody
when did it
talk
happen?
about? How about we talk about Mark 14, chapter 50?
When did that happen, guys? That Ethiopian thing. When did that happen?
Operation Solomon.
Solomon, that's right.
Forcefully sterilize them and put them on birth control. And of course they lie. Why did they go to give the apartheid government, white government in South Africa, nuclear weapons? To use them on elephants?
To test them out, maybe. Unbelievable.
I don't see Israel as our enemy of the West. I don't understand where all this is coming from. There's
I watch rabbis speak. I watch today's rabbis speak. That's enough for me to hear out of their mouth.
But this
hell, they fired on the USS Liberty. How many U.S. fellas got killed in that fiasco?
9/11.
How do we know what really happened that day?
What, with the USS Liberty?
How do we know what really happened that day?
We have first-hand eyewitness accounts. The men that lived through it on the boat said it. Is that eyewitness account isn't enough for anybody? Really? That's what today's come to, because you can testify in court and it doesn't even matter if you saw the murder. You didn't see it.
Put your Bibles. Wait a minute. Put your Bibles back on the shelf and look at things the way they really are happening. You've been bamboozled.
Unbelievable. Now she's debating the fact of whether or not the USS Liberty was attacked by Israel.
No, I didn't.
Israel has come forward and even said they did it. They're not going to make it blatant, but they admitted to it. They strafed that boat. They shot. They sent in a gunboat. They sent in. They put the thing at the bottom of the drink. They called it. They wanted no survivors of that. How can you even dispute that?
Hey, so what do you think? We should kill all the Jews?
I'll tell you what you do with them. I'll tell you what you do with them. Like Hitler wanted to do with them. Like Hitler wanted to do with them. He didn't want to kill them all. He wanted them out of his country. You want to have that operation? You get to have it in Madagascar where it was supposed to be at, and you put them there because if they believe in what they believe in, they're sick. They have no business.
I wouldn't want to kill Sammy Davis Jr. at all. I like this entertainment.
You know, the pedophilia has gone. If you knew the Greek language and how the Greek wrote before Hebrew, and people say that the Bible was written in Hebrew are full of shit because the Hebrew language only has 8,000 words in its entirety. Where Greek has 250,000 words to start. So when you have the original translations of the Bible and some of the things that we think are real because we read it through the Hebrew and the King James Version, the things that are misconstrued and mistranslated are absolutely mind-bending because if you knew what the authors told and what was...
The three councils that met wrote the original Bible, which was called canon in Aramaic and in Hebrew and in Greek and in Latin.
No, that's Greek. Greek and Hebrew almost at the exact same time came out. But you can't say that a vocabulary, an actual word... I can't even understand how 8,000 total words is all they have.
So you're telling me that the Greeks came over to the Middle East and they taught the Jews how to write the Bible?
The Greek language in the Mediterranean was so abundant because the Hebrew language did exist, but it was on its way out, and they adopted the Greek and the Hebrew mistranslation. Here you go. Now, what happens is you have a dying language, and it's been for 700 years.
Not only that, you got a dying people. No. What did Abdul Nasser say?
Yes.
What?
Do you know what?
What did
can you explain me then? Ken, let me ask you a question.
One person at a time. One person.
Ken, let me ask you a question. Let me hear your version of Mark 14, 50 through 52. Where Jesus was caught in the garden.
Let me pull it out my ass and see if I can remember it. So
you should remember this because it's not here. I can give it to you because you have in 14 Mark 50 through 52 is the day of the Last Supper. That evening, Jesus was caught and arrested by the Roman guard in the courtyard. The King James Version translation of this doesn't show anything of what the Septuagint, every Greek author back then, when they wrote about it, they talked about it and coincide, and they agree that he was with a boy that was naked with only a cloth around his penis. Do you know why or who are crucified in Roman times? Not thieves, pedophiles. Yeah, let that sink in. Pedophilia.
Let me explain something to you. You need to go and understand.
Go ahead, right? Because I don't know anything about theology, or I don't know anything about the mystics. Right?
I'm not talking about theology. I'm talking
about mystics, the mystery. You know what the mystery is?
Okay.
No. Go ahead and explain to me.
Do you know what etymology is? Do you know what etymology is?
Yes, I do. Yep.
What is it? What is etymology?
It's the study of etymology. How's that?
Etymology is the origination of the word. Well, here's the thing.
Exactly. That's where you go. Where you go with the. If you look at the Greek, look at the Greek word, the dictionary of the Greek letters and the words.
Yeah.
Every single thing has a root.
Wait a second, Dave. Wait a minute. Let's back up here a second. Okay. There were three councils that made the Bible canon. Do you know what the name of the councils were?
I asked you a question. Don't answer a question with a question. I want to know what you think. I want to know what the question. You answer my question with the question. I want to know what you think about Jesus being in the courtyard call with a young boy yelling, "I am not a lay stace. I am not a lay stace," which it translates to pirate, which were the people who brought children from all over the world to that area because it was okay to do back then, as well as the drugs.
Hey, let me explain something to you. And I'm trying to be rational here. And I know you've been indoctrinated with this nonsense, so just let me.
It's not. You know what? You're going to call it nonsense, and everything out of your mouth is nonsense. You're not going to educate me on anything.
That man has been
I don't have anything. I don't even want to hear you
with that.
Yeah,
you're kind of handicapped in the way you're putting all this together. No, seriously. There were three councils.
Seriously, nonsense.
Because there were three councils that finally, when the Bible was made canon, which was made the original Bible, okay?
So what are you saying? In the Torah,
wait a minute. Hang on for a second. What's the original Bible?
Right.
I'm trying to explain
Are you including the
it to
New Testament?
When was it printed?
I'm trying to explain it to you.
When was it printed?
I'm trying to explain it to you, but you will not let me because information is not on here. It's like something that is foreign to
the Bible. Then what is your definition of the Bible?
That was printed at some particular date, Cat. And you know, you keep leaving out the fact that Abdul Nasser, the first president of Egypt, told Menachem Begin that you left here black and came back white. There's never going to be any peace.
Okay, I know. I'm trying to. Y'all let me talk before you interrupt me. There were three councils that met. They met over periods of years. There were people from all over the Middle East came with their factions and what they wanted to put into the Bible. They actually
right there. Stop, Kat. Stop.
Hang on, Ted. Let her finish, man. Let her finish. Ted, let her finish, man.
What they wanted to put in.
Oh, let her finish, and then Ted can talk uninterrupted. Go ahead, Kat. You finish first.
So they came from all over the northern part of Africa. They came from all over the Middle East, and these different factions that considered themselves Christians, followers of Christ. They didn't actually call themselves Christians. It was kind of a slur back then to be called a Christian. So they came together and they decided finally what was written and what would be put into this document. And there were many different languages that had to be translated. That is true. Now,
what council meeting was that?
Hang on.
Wait a minute. Hang on for a second. What council meeting was that? And put a date to it, please.
Well, one of the councils is Nicaea, and I forget the other two councils. I think Nicaea lasted
council
about
meeting
10
in
years.
Nicaea was 325 A.D. called by the Emperor Constantine.
Yes.
And he had disputes between Arius. You had disputes between Arius and Theophilus because they were saying that this created creature could not have a human nature.
I'm just telling you how the Bible was made canon. That's all I'm trying to tell you.
What is your definition of the Bible, though?
All right, Erasmus now. Let Dave go.
Erasmus came up with the printing press in the 1500s.
Oh, all right. Go ahead, Kat. Please finish. Go ahead, because everybody wants to speak here. Go ahead.
So you go on to 1648 when the English language was written. It's called Elizabethan English, and it was written in Elizabethan English. It was translated. It was a very big deal for ordinary people, the average person. I wouldn't even say there's such a thing as an average person, that the masses could have a Bible, could have this Bible. It was a huge thing. It transformed civilization. It transformed Western civilization. Out of that grew the Enlightenment because more people became in possession of information. It changed. People became more educated and aware of the spells spiritually, economically. As you know, there were just lots and lots of wars between the Catholics and the Protestants all over Europe during this period of time until finally people wanting to get away from that persecution. It was one of the reasons they came to the New World So when you say that the Bible, the way that it's written today, is not true, it is true. It is true. It's only because of the way language changes from the original to the present can be confusing, because the way the Bible was translated with so many parables in there that you have to study it to really understand what it means. I understand that. But just to pick one word out of a verse and say, well, it meant this in Greek, so that's what... You have to go back to the original translation and know what it means.
That's exactly where I'm going to stop you now, because I'm going to ask you, because what you're talking about... What you're talking about is a complete translation of the Bible from Jewish standards.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Go ahead.
You want to talk? You want to go to the source? You go to the Septuagint in the Greek, not what other people wanted to put in it. That's a
that's not what you
called a mongolization.
You know why come?
We gotta have time limits when everybody speaks, because we're going forever here. Let Cave go now. Go ahead, Cave. It's Cave's turn now. Go ahead, Cave. Go ahead.
Okay. Before you can have a translation of the Bible, first of all, you have to understand that it was different authors from the same time period speaking the same language that agreed on the same things. First off,
that's not true.
Before Hebrew even got to be brought into the situation in the mix, because once it was, and you have to understand this, because if you don't know what the source, you want the source of material, and it is Greek. Being Greek, do you know what the word Christ means? There was more than one Christ, okay? Christ is a medical term in Greek. Christ, that means you were Christed. People were Christed all over the Mediterranean. How? Because it was a pharmaceutical frenzy out there. There were so many different drugs. They know for a fact, because when you have three authors, three of them, that all come together and have the same and calendrical as an event, you can then say you have fact. Nowhere has today's Bible that you're talking about, the translation that is brought to us, can have a single author of a book that can stand by it and actually say, yes, it's there with it. Because it doesn't happen, it hasn't happened. But what you do have is you have the Gnostic movement back then saying what was going on. They wrote down what happened. Okay? The facts are the facts. Now, when you have a people that are frowned upon because they get high on these drugs that are rampant, and you have Jesus, who was a rabbi. He studied the Talmud. That's a fact. Now, what do rabbis that study the Talmud do in New York City during circumcision? Yes, that's a tough subject to talk about. It's very... No, I'm not going to shut up, because you don't want to hear the fact. That's a fact. That's a fact.
All right, guys, come on.
In New York City. Kids dying in New York City from herpes. Herpes being passed around in New York City. You don't want to hear the truth?
Let Cave finish. Let Cave finish. No matter how, whatever. If everybody disagrees, they disagree. Let Cave finish, though. Go ahead, please.
So you have documentation of the Roman, every Greek author back at that time, during the time that it happened, not 40 years after Christ, like the apostles show up and write stories, because you know what? Everybody was allowed to have children back then. You were almost gifted a child from these pirates that came in. People chose kids off a boat, and it wasn't trafficking. Trafficking was the slavery that went on. The kids were gifted to these people. Now, when you have someone who's walking around claiming to be the Son of God, the Messiah, this, and that, his name was Jesus, but it wasn't Christ. He was Christed because he was on drugs like everybody else. And the thing is, when you say it can't be true and it's bullshit, when you look up and you see all these authors write about it, everybody just happened to make up the same story. It's unbelievable. But because we have this translation, because the people that it involves, the Talmudic rabbis who do the pedophilia, was going on back then, it's going on today.
He's absolutely right. The word Christ comes out of the Christ, which is the mummification process that was going on in Egypt. And every other male child name was Jesus, because why? It means Savior.
That's right.
But Ptolemy II was named Sutar, Savior. Is this image taken off of Serapis where you get this image of Jesus? That was one of the big questions back at that time. Come on now.
All right, Cat, you want to come back at him with something now? I mean, if you're done, I didn't know if you're done.
The original Trinity, the original Trinity was the Father.
The Bible saying his children. The children. That's what you hear in the Bible. His children. God's children.
All right.
Jesus' children. You know, that's a blatant way of putting it right in front of your face so that they can say they told you so.
Okay, Sarge or somebody or Cat now or whoever's left now. Somebody else take a turn.
I'd like to add a little something to this discussion about whether or not Eritrean and Ethiopian women, people from the group of Ethiopians known as Beta Israel Jews. That's the ones that came to Sudan, Eritrea, and Ethiopia, whether or not they were involuntarily sterilized. And I did a bit of research into that. And there was apparently some wrongdoing involving those women, but it wasn't sterilization. It was administering a drug called Depo-Provera, I think it's called, and it is a contraceptive which has an effect of 3 months approximately. And not all of the women who were administered it were given knowing consent before they were given it. It was apparently improperly administered to prevent immediate pregnancies so there wouldn't be an undue welfare burden on the state of Israel. And that didn't happen until the fourth wave of Ethiopian immigration Jews to Israel, because there were 4 basic waves of Ethiopian Jews to Israel. The first wave happened in the 1930s. They had Yemenite Jews from Italian Eritrea that came in. The second wave was between 1963 and 1975. He had another relatively small wave of Beta Jews that came in. The third wave was with 75 and 90. That was a bit bigger. Operation Brothers in November of 79 to 83 and March of 83 to March of 85. And then the fourth wave was the one that was controversial, and that was the one involving Operation Solomon, where about 14,325 Beta Israeli Jews came to camps there, and it was arranged with this temporary contraceptive, this Depo-Provera, however you pronounce it, I forget how you pronounce it. This Depo-Provera was administered to them, and not all the women were given voluntary consent. Now, there was no evidence of any permanent sterilization of any woman, even though it is quite possible that not giving someone to give informed consent is a violation of medical ethics. But at the same time, the population, the Beta Israel population of Israel, has grown from 20,000 in 1993 to 168,560, and that is almost 2% of the Israeli population. So if they were attempting to sterilize the Beta Israel Jews, they were spectacularly unsuccessful. They've been given a welfare support payments. They've been given housing. They've been given all sorts of things that have made them full-fledged Israeli citizens. So while there may be a lot to criticize Israel from, I think the criticism should be confined to those doctors who were immediately treating those women in the fourth wave of Beta Israel immigration in the 1990s. Not all of the waves of immigration that came there.
Let me ask you a question. Why was they sterilizing these black Ethiopian women?
But they didn't. There's no evidence that they were permanently sterilized. They were given contraceptives that were long-lasting, not sterilization.
It didn't have to be permanent, but the gist of the idea, and it's simple. It's because it was birth control.
Well, yes, and there was some evidence that there may have been, again, I say may have been right-wing elements who snuck that in there in order to prevent, who were opposed to the policy of the Israeli government. The policy of the Israeli government was to bring these people there. That was Israel's official policy. Just think about it for a minute. Why would they spend millions of dollars to bring thousands of Falasha Jews to Israel and then sterilize them? They just leave them there instead of bringing them there. There were some people, like with the United States. You got people who are opposed to governmental policy. and they would do everything they can to try to block it. That doesn't mean it was
I'll
the government
tell you why
policy
they brought
to do
them
it.
there. And I've been to Gondor many times up there on the hill. They brought them there for servitude. They needed the servants to do the work. That's why they brought them there. And they got more claims to the area. Hell, it's right next door. But that government that you got there, as Helen Thomas said, they came from Germany, they came from Europe, and they came from Poland. They don't even look like the indigenous people in that area. And that's the whole gist of it. Who in the hell should this outside government going to tell these people who goes back blood-wise thousands of years that you can or you cannot come here? That's a bunch of bull crap.
Well, they women. They went and got them. They converted 34 El Al airliners. They removed the seats so they get as many of them as they could, and at the cost of millions of dollars, they transported them from there to Israel. They didn't just keep them out. They actively went there and brought them to Israel because they were in danger of their lives from the existing Ethiopian government that was oppressing them and killing them.
All right, then let me ask you this. You got Beninese group back in the 1970s went to what now is called Dimona, and they formed that. The Israeli government don't want to recognize them. They black Americans say they got a right there, and they're trying to constantly put them out.
Well, I think it's a different story with them because most of those Jews that they immigrated there wanted to go to Israel. The people you're mentioning are making claims that Israel doesn't recognize, just like a lot of people making claims in the United States to be sovereign citizens. So they're actually having a dispute with the Israeli government.
It's one thing for somebody to come from the outside and all of a sudden say they have the authority to say who come in and who cannot. That's a bunch of bullcrap.
Well, as a matter of practical reality, Israel is a sovereign nation. It's recognized by most every nation in the world. As a practical matter, they do.
I know. I mean, wait a second here. Well, with all due respect here, where does Israel belong as a country then? Just say, for instance, where do they belong? Well, you're saying they never had a country at all throughout the history of the world?
Wait. We're saying who never had a country?
There was none back in ancient times.
1948 started it.
Who never had a country? Are you speaking of the Palestinians?
I'm asking,
the Palestinians.
I'm asking. Are you guys saying that Israel never had a country?
No, Ethiopia is definitely a country. Ethiopia has been a nation for thousands of years. We're not talking about Ethiopia. We're talking about the people that the Israelis airlifted from Ethiopia to keep them out of the hands of the Marxists who are going to kill them.
Okay.
Well, that's outsiders also. But to say that the people in that area have been there forever, all you got to do is look at them. You ain't got nobody there nobody there in originality have no hook nose, aquiline nose. They come from another part of the world. Because
where did they come from? Where did they come from?
They came from Germany. They came from Poland.
Well, remember now, 20% of the population of Israel is Arab. They are people from that region, and the 20% is a larger percentage than black people here in the United States.
I'm talking about going back in ancient times, Sarge. Then pre-dynastic time, Egypt. There was no land occupation called no Israel.
There was no land.
Just think, the world power at that time was Egypt. They wasn't going to allow that on their borders.
Who did the Egyptians enslave at that time? The Jews, right?
Nobody enslaved. Didn't no damn Jews build no pyramids.
You're telling me that the Jews were not enslaved by the Egyptians?
Well, clearly the argument now is whether or not Israel I think the argument here, what we're having here, is whether or not the state of Israel as a sovereign nation should exist or not, as it is presently governed. Now, I think that is another issue rather than the. Wait a minute, I think that is another issue other than the fact that it does exist and it is a sovereign nation. Now, if you're going to say it shouldn't exist, then what you're going to have to do is militarily defeat it and wipe it out. But as a matter of reality and diplomatic fact, it is a sovereign nation.
It exists
Okay, that's a good
today and
point,
has
Sarge.
its sovereignty due to a British mandate, the way the British went around the damn world doing the same thing.
Yes.
Hell, did they not
Yes.
do a mandate also in other parts of the world?
Yes.
Hell, you
That
just
is
talked
true.
about South. That was not
Yes.
Somalia mandated too? They
Yes,
had no
that is
damn
true.
business doing
That
that.
is true. That all that is true, and every single Arab nation in that region also exists as a direct result of the British mandate. That would be Iraq, that would be Syria, that would be Lebanon, that would all of those countries are a direct result of the British mandate. So if Israel has no right to exist as a result of a British mandate, then neither do any of those other countries.
What was Syria before it came to Syria?
It was
the Assyrians.
It was Assyria.
Their leader,
But remember,
at one point in time was Sennacherib.
One at a time.
But remember, though, it was conquered by those damn Ottomans. The Ottomans ran it for 500 years, over 5 centuries. The Ottoman Empire ran that region.
Go ahead, Bianchi. Or Cat. Sorry, Cat. You go
The Ottoman Empire won a battle too. That don't mean that does not mean the people ever went away.
They governed it. They completely governed that region. They had just like the Romans did.
Cat wants to speak, Sarge. Go ahead, Cat.
Okay, y'all. What you're arguing about is history prior to 1900, and I just say that not 1900. That's a historical year. I'm just using that as a line in history to look at the 20th century. So in the 20th century, we knew that we were coming upon these great technological advances, and the world had to be reordered. And at that time, the leading powers between the United States and Great Britain decided that we had to settle up everything in the Middle East to make it like a world order, which you could call it back then, was their version of the New World Order. So they played this game, and it was called, the name in history of this period is called the Great Game, or the Big Game. And so what's happening now, we're having another reorder, and we're playing another game. We're basically, as Joe said earlier in the show, it's a repeat of history. It's what's going on now. We're fighting over borders. We're fighting over resources. So I just want to say this. We can disagree on why these countries exist or who historically laid claim to that land, and we can argue about religion and all this stuff, but we have to focus on the world we live in today and where we're going from here, and how do we retain our freedoms along the way. And I think those guys that died on D-Day were fighting for the same things that we're talking about. And I think we need to get back into believing that we're all in this world together, and we do need each other. And what frustrates me in listening to you all talk is this division. I know you all like each other, but this division of things you argue about are not productive. And
can I say something now?
Hey, dear. No, just one more thing, and what irritates me about Cave and this and being anti-Jews and all this stuff, you can hate Jews all you want. I don't care if you do. I'm not going to try to change your mind. But how is this productive? How is this just a single out of group?
Let me say this, and I got to go.
Well, I can answer that. I'll answer that for you.
How is this
if you don't know your history and what happened in your
Cave,
history,
you can go next
repeat.
after she finishes. Cave, you can go next after she finishes. Go ahead, Kat. Finish, please.
Cave,
okay.
I'm not a know-it-all. I have been to college, and one of my greatest professors, as a matter of fact, I would love to have stayed in college and gotten a history degree after I got my communications degree. But I just had this great history teacher, and one of the 2 classes I took, one was church history, which was studying where religions came from. I'm talking about from Catholicism and then all the Protestant religions. So I've taken a class in all this, and I understand it. I don't remember things in detail because I'm much older now, and I don't remember it. But I have respect for history and all these things that happen. And I try not to judge the past by today's standards or values or mores. It's fruitless to do that. And I really don't like I don't like it that you come on here, every show you're on, you bring up the Jews. It irritates me to no end because I don't know how that's moving us forward. We have so many other things to worry about today, like maintaining our freedoms. That's all I have to say.
All right, Kat.
And I'll
turn.
comment on that. And the reason I
Can
go
Tave
after
go
the
first?
Jews is
Tave first, and then you,
Yeah.
Bianchi? All right, because I told Tave he was next. Go ahead, Tave.
And I will address that fact because the fact of the matter is the people that are behind the problems that we have today because of history that you know and everybody else is starting to wake up to is because of the Jew. That's all there is to it. You named 109 countries, named them, excommunicated, banished, barred 1,030 times for the same things that are going on today, and this is the last place left. They have not done it prior to this. They have infiltrated in every aspect, media, politics, judicial system, banking, and have control over the media, the biggest thing of all, the media. Then, once that has happened, which they've done in the small percentage that they are, they take control and have strangled everything. Now, the only problem is they didn't realize, just like one of the Japanese commanders said, they can't make landfall and go ashore in America, is because behind every blade of grass there is an American with a gun. That is the only thing that has stopped what's going on in this country is because we have a right to bear arms. They've already started to take the First Amendment away, and every single person that I see on television and in the news that's after the First Amendment is Jewish. Every single one of them says it's anti-Semitic. I'm not speaking anti-Semitic when I'm speaking facts. Facts are not anti-Semitic. You want to talk about anti-Semitic and who's anti-Semite? Let's talk about the actual Jews killing the Palestinians. That's anti-Semitic. And I yield.
Okay, Bianchi.
And you know
Bianchi,
another
you're
thing
next.
too. You know another thing, praise. Theodore Herschel in Balfour was talking about making their return land Uganda. Now let me ask you a question. How would it look for a bunch of whites going back into that all-white black nation and saying, we back? And the thing that pisses me off, they try to erase a people out of the annals of history. That's a bunch of bullcrap. That is terrible. And we stand by. They wouldn't be shit if it wasn't for the donations and the aid that comes from the United States.
That's right.
That's why they say death to America. If you had somebody giving your kids poison and drugs, what would you tell them? The same thing.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, Joe.
Okay, whoa. Bianchi, you done? Bianchi, you done? You done?
I could go on and on. And see, here's the thing. Like Nelson Mandela told them in one, in New York, in one forum, your enemies is not my enemies. Factual. And Britain going around the world, that's one of the problems we have today, Britain and France, going around the world putting these mandates. What gives you the right, other than your guns, to put a mandate on a people and basically tell them they can or cannot exist? That's a bunch of bullcrap. I'm done.
Okay, whoever's next.
Well, I'll tell you, Joe, while it is true that Theodore Herzl, reacting to the plight and the pogroms that the Russians were carrying out against Jews in Russia in 1903, at the 6th Zionist Congress at Basel on August 26, 1903, Herzl proposed creating a Jewish state in Uganda. That is true. There's no doubt about it. It was a program that was brought up as an emergency refuge. Now, that was so opposed by the overwhelming majority of the Zionist Congress, it almost led to a split in the Zionist movement. Most of the Zionists, even though Herzl was the chairman, most of them were so opposed to that they almost were ready to split away over it because they were determined to establish a Jewish state in Palestine. So even though, true, he did make that proposal, it did not have anywhere near enough popular support with the Zionist Congress to pass. So it was a dead end before it even got started. Didn't get off the ground. Now, again, what I'm saying here now is the discussion now as a de jure matter, not de facto, Israel exists as a sovereign nation. It is recognized as such with diplomatic relations by almost every nation on the planet. So therefore, the question is, if you want it to be done away with, you're going to have to get it to either voluntarily dissolve, which I guarantee you it will never do, or you're going to have to defeat it by military force. And right now, that is just not likely. They have declared this war on Hamas right now, and from everything I can see, and I've been looking at this every chance I get, they're conducting it in accordance with the rules on international warfare that most people accept. I think the claims of war crimes are wildly overblown, even though there are some. But the point of the matter is that now, as a de jure matter, the state of Israel exists as a sovereign nation. It's not blown away until you defeat it militarily. And Israel right now has too many allies for that to happen.
And we are one of them. Isn't that the problem? Well, how do we fight ourselves?
Well, look, I'm not for Israel. Believe me, I'm not for Israel. I do not want to be dragged into a war in that Middle East. And we might have to go fight in Russia. That's why, actually, even though this might sound contradictory, I am for Israel ending it as soon as possible to lessen the likelihood that we get dragged into it. Hamas started it. And that's why they declared war, so they could fight it like a war and not like a police action. That means they got to be violent. They got to go in. They got to win, and they got to get out.
You know.
Well,
I mean, look, Palestinians are not a people either. You know, who are the Palestinians?
They've never been a nation, not once in the history of mankind.
There what, 60 different tribes? You know,
they've never been a nation. Never. They've always been a province, like Appalachia.
You have to look at this like this, though. When you're living in an area and you don't have the politics that the rest of the world has, just because you don't adopt that situation doesn't mean that that's not where you're from. That'd be like wherever you put your feet down and you make ground and you build a family or whatever, and it develops from there. That's your homeland. So wherever that is, and if people settled like back then, that's how it was. And if there were tribes that wandered around, that's what they did. They were vagabond wanderers, whatever you want to call them. But the thing being is, you just can't shove 100,000 people and tell them they got to go because these other people are coming in. That's what can't be done. I've never understood.
But that's the thing of it, Dave. Here's the thing of it. You realize that the areas that the Zionists purchased from Arab landowners were arid, non-productive. They were marshland. They weren't anything. Yeah. They were charged exorbitant prices for them. Arab leaders were complaining about the fact that Arab landowners were selling this worthless land to Jews at high prices. Nobody was doing anything with it. So the Zionists got there, and the Arab leaders remarked upon the industriousness of the European Jewish settlers who were making the land productive, and this is key, attracting Arabs to the area based upon the increased productivity and economic activity. The Arabs came into these Zionist areas looking for work and a better living condition. That is a matter of record by census. You can see the progression of the Arab population in these areas that were settled by Zionists because the Zionists made the desert bloom. So if you're looking at it, you're putting the cart before the horse. The Arabs were attracted by what the Zionists were doing. That's how they got there.
I just heard a guy speak from out somewhere out in the far west here in America, and he said if he had to choose someone to bring in from an area that was like a vast desert, he would bring any Palestinian before he brought anyone else because they single-handedly can turn into what is nothing somewhere to prosper from. And he said that about
before the Zionists came there, they weren't doing it. You had observer after observer after observer saying the Arabs there were doing nothing with the land. From all throughout the 19th century, you've got countless observers remarking upon how nothing was being done with the capabilities for irrigation and making the land bloom. Right. And they were complaining about it. So were the Arab leaders. They were complaining about it too.
Well,
that is true.
I just never understood one thing out of it all. When they talk about going to war, or if me and you were going to go out in the parking lot and fist fight, I have never in my life seen the actual rules that I have to abide by. Now, if I'm going outside to fight you, I'm going to fight.
Well,
there ain't
Dave,
no rules.
that's not true.
Well,
Sometimes I'd agree to fight kids after school. No guns, no knives. You know what I mean?
Well, because no matter what, at the end of the day, that's an agreement that's agreed upon between two people. If you're going to war, you're trying to kill. War is for death and to take spoils of war.
Exactly. That's why I keep saying you want to avoid wars. That's why I keep saying you want to avoid wars. Look, there are not many nations in the history of mankind that were not established brutally and bloodily. I'd like you to name any. You can't. They all had some measure of bloodshed, brutality, and inhumanity and atrocity attached to their formation. There isn't one in the history of mankind, except maybe the United States, and even we had to fight a bloody civil war, actually, with the fellow countrymen, because everybody was a British subject, fighting other British subjects.
The British single-handedly have their hand in more bloodshed in every country in this world than anybody else.
Oh, the Brits are dirty, man. Rothschilds are dirty.
The more widespread, let's put it that way. I don't know if it's actually more, but they certainly were more widespread because they went all around the globe doing it. But if you ask me, the record, I think, is the Mongols. I think they had the biggest body count.
Oh, the Scythians, yes. Mongols, yes. But
so that's who I think had the biggest body count. But they were in one area. The British did it all around the world, so I get your point.
And there's a problem with that because then you can fast forward from what they did by conquering. They implement the banking system, which now controls the entire world, which is owned by the Jews.
There you go.
Now, who was the first major ruler to implement fiat currency? Guess who?
Goldsmith.
He was the one who created paper currency. Fiat currency was Genghis Khan, the Mongol.
I don't know, Sarge.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
Look it up.
Yeah, because they introduced that and they saw that and they took that and ran with it. Absolutely, he's right. That's exactly where that comes from.
So the Jews capitalized on it, though.
You could say that. You could say that.
As they were shoved westward through the Caucasus Mountains, they found the Rothschilds. Yes. The Red Field in Germany.
Really, though, to get to the bottom of the beginning, we got to deal with here and now. Well, what are we going to do about now? Well, are we going to root these problems out?
We know who the
problem is. I think we need to avoid all foreign entanglements to the extent that we can, unless it aligns directly with our national security interests. If it doesn't, we need to avoid being entangled.
There you go.
Damn who it is.
Anybody else? It's got to stop.
But wait a second. You throw out these vague terms. What does it mean, our national interest? What does that actually mean?
Okay, here's what it means to me. Here's what it means to me. I'll be happy to answer. Here's what it means to me. First of all, the United States is a mercantile nation. It's a merchant nation. It trades across the high seas. So our national interest, our security of the high seas, so our economic merchant fleet can travel and freely trade with other nations. That's one primary national security interest. Other ones are those places where, until we can get them the hell out, we've got all these crazy military bases in place that we shouldn't have.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, that doesn't mean we can abandon the personnel there to being destroyed and wiped out. It's in our national and the security interest to protect our military personnel across sea from attacks by any enemies, no matter what the motivation of that enemy is. 3, it is in our national security interest to protect our borders. That's another national security interest. And sometimes we can have allies that can help us secure our borders, like Mexico. We can never give a government that is a responsible neighbor. It will help us to secure our borders, just like we can help them to secure theirs. So there's a myriad of national security interests that are genuine, and what we need to do is start saying what is best for the United States and the citizens here, and then we can determine all the rest of them.
Okay, let me ask you a follow-up question.
And we don't protect those people, who do we hold accountable like we have now with what's going on with all this stuff? Like you said, if we pulled out of somewhere and we abandon our people, whoever's in charge must be held accountable. We have that right now. And we're not doing shit about it.
Okay, I know that's the world you enjoy. That's not the world we live in, that Sarge described, and I don't mean that to be like condescending or anything. The world that we live in, we have multinational corporations whose interests we protect around the world. So how do we say to Ford Motor Company, you can't go build cars somewhere else? You have to.
No,
stay
they
here in
can,
America?
but we won't protect them then. We won't help them out then. You want to go to China and build
You're
cars?
on
Fine,
your
you're on
own.
your own.
That's right.
But that's not the world we live in. The world
Well, we have
live
to
in.
reverse then. We got to go back to that old world. We have to. We have no choice because the world that we're living in now isn't working.
Self-contained.
No, but Joe, she's right about that. She is correct.
It is,
These corporations have an undue influence on our foreign policy. There's no doubt about that. She is correct. Here's the thing. We've got to restore the balance to what it should be. That's going to be hard as hell, but we need to start doing it.
Yeah, because you get corruption.
So it won't be that way in the future.
And the corrupt ones in power now, we got to get rid of. They got to be held accountable.
Yeah, these corporations are corrupting. There's no doubt about that. None. If they are. But we need to stop them from doing it.
Okay, the number one man that advises Joe Biden, his name is Mike Donlin. His brother is Tom Donlin. Who is Tom Donlin? Well, he runs this one huge section of BlackRock. In case you don't know, BlackRock is like one of the top, if not the top, one of the top, investment firms in the world.
Which is owned by the Rothschilds, by the way.
And they own more property than anywhere else in America.
BlackRock is not owned by the Rothschilds.
Yes, they have four. I just saw a documentary on that where they all have a percentage of ties and influence in it. Actually, yes, because they were going over the richest families in the world.
BlackRock operates. BlackRock runs practically every state in the country. Texas just divested from them. They run all the pension funds, all these university funds. That's how BlackRock. I mean, they.
Yes, but who controls the money, Cat? The central bank. And the central bank is owned by what? Foreign stockholders. And I have a list of those names of those foreign stockholders. And Rothschild is one of them, one of the main players. You got Schwab, he's another one. Rockefeller, they're another one. You got about a dozen of them. They're the ones that own the stock.
They invest their clients' money in BlackRock. It's exactly what I just told you. It's not the Rothschilds are not all. Y'all need to get off that. Y'all need to stop.
The Rothschilds are. Everyone can agree on here. The Rothschilds are what?
The Rothschilds own the Federal Reserve.
Oh, God.
The ones who print.
They own a majority of the stock in the Federal Reserve. Yes, they do. You can look it up.
Rothschilds own everything. Okay, so there's this guy.
No, they don't own everything. No, they don't own everything.
Okay.
But they own a great deal of the shares around the world of the multi-corporations.
Just like all the property in America being bought up.
I mean, what is it? I talk and you just want to
sometimes you just need to be interrupted because what you're saying is not true. Because we know for a fact the Rothschilds own a larger percentage of BlackRock than anybody.
I just mentioned Tom Donlin and his connection to Mike Donlin. That's all.
I don't know who that is, to be honest with you. So I can't speak on that.
BlackRock has to be disbarred. They have to be broke up. That conglomerate has to be split apart.
But BlackRock is part of the Vanguard Corporation, and all of these people have are stakeholders in BlackRock is just one of the biggest shareholders in the whole damn Vanguard group. There's 15 or 20 of these corporations.
There has to be a root. There has to be a root to this evil somewhere. If you follow the money, you got to get to the bottom somewhere.
I've told y'all the root to it over and over on these shows, and you don't listen to me. Because you think I'm stupid or something.
You're not going far enough back to the source.
Okay, the source is our foreign policy establishment. It's an establishment. It's huge.
The source.
Okay, who funds that establishment? Who funds that establishment?
Okay, are you going to listen without interrupting me?
I'm listening.
Okay. Our foreign policy establishment is massive. It's a tangled web. It's run by the State Department and the Department of Defense. The Department of Justice and every other agency has an office called the National Security Office in every agency. So that means what you all call the CIA, who is run by the State Department, has a small office. So the CIA has its hands in every agency in our government. The CIA came under very bad a reputation back in the 70s. You can look all this up. So what they did, so what they did was when Ronald Reagan became president, they got him to establish this office called the National Endowment for Democracy. Look it up. I've told you about this a zillion times. So the National Endowment for Democracy, they are funded and they are allowed to do the things that the CIA can't get away with. The CIA, people that work directly for the CIA, they're not going to get their hands dirty. They're going to farm it out. The CIA runs the cartels in Mexico. We just, anytime that you see a populist person arise in any government, we get rid of those people. We do it through soft power. We do it through color revolution. We started to shit in Ukraine with this, in Ukraine. I could just go on and on. But you can't get to the root of it. It's our foreign policy establishment. When you start I'm going to tell you what they call themselves.
Well, wait a minute. Let me ask you about the State Department. Who's Victoria Nuland?
Yes, she's a player.
What is she?
That's true.
What is she in the State Department? What is she? She's a Jew.
She quit.
She's a Jew.
She's Ukrainian. So?
Behind the war in Ukraine in 2014.
She doesn't work there. Yes, there are people in the State Department that have from their ancestors were Russian and they have a visceral hate of Russia. And they most definitely want a war with Russia. That is true. Absolutely.
That's what we're facing.
As a matter of fact, there's a lot more I could talk to you about this. There is this faction that just hates Russia so much, and they've been gunning for a war with Russia all their lives. That is true. They're trained to do this.
Yeah.
Victoria Nuland's
Well, they're behind the Bolsheviks.
His name is
they're
Robert Kaplan. Okay. Oh, God. Robert Kaplan, what he calls, what I'm explaining to you, is called the Blob, B-L-O-B. Go look up Robert Kaplan, the Blob. These people, they have a war chest that's much bigger than our GDP of the entire country. They're unstoppable. So all the things
and
they're talking about are not going to.
Those same people own the Federal Reserve. That's why they can drive these
They don't own the Federal
them.
Reserve, you fucking idiot. Good Lord,
fuck
Federal
you,
Reserve
stupid
is
cunt.
Listen,
fuck off and
oh,
die.
Man.
You fuck. You know what? I'm a fucking idiot.
The
And you're a stupid
Federal
fucking
Reserve is
cunt.
like a small,
fuck off and die. Go pound salt, you Jew dick baby biter. Fuck off.
Jew dick baby biter.
Fuck you.
Yeah, why
fuck
did you
off
have
and
to call
die,
him an
you
idiot, man?
anti-American
I mean,
fuck.
we're having a nice conversation. I mean, if you disagree with him, you didn't have to call him an idiot. I mean, because that's going to create an argument, you know?
Right. And I won't stand by it because I'm not going to be told I'm an idiot by some fucking buddy that has no fucking
I know. Nobody wants to be called an idiot.
Fuck off.
I know. Nobody wants to be called an idiot, you know?
The Federal Reserve is just like a small player in all of this.
We disagree with you. They're the ones that funnel the money. They're the ones that are funneling the money. They create the money.
No, they don't.
You know?
They don't funnel the money.
Hey,
funnel
do
the money.
something before you go to bed at night. Start reading and doing some research and shut the fuck up calling in and calling people idiots because you are about a fucking idiot. Fuck you.
You have a little dick, don't you? I know you do. Why don't you go play with it? Blow some steam off, buddy.
Okay. Who's next?
Well, I guess that's that.
What an idiot.
That ended the conversation.
He's a fucking idiot.
All right. I guess Bianchi, you're gone. Bianchi's gone. I don't know if he's still there. I don't know, Sarge. Anybody final thoughts here?
Well, like I said, I think look, nobody gets the history that they like. I certainly don't. I mean, I got to look at things that have happened historically, and some things are just the way they are until some tremendous force comes along to undo them. And let's face it, that's what history is all about. At least the big events in history, things change. Things that once were can no longer be. Who knows what the future is going to hold? Right now, Israel is a state that exists in the Middle East. It is one of the most significant players in the Middle East. It is the only state that has anything approaching a multi-ethnic society where the various elements of the society get to participate more or less equally, or at least significantly, in the way the nation is governed. None of the others come even close.
They built the wall around their country or their state, Sarge. They built the wall around their country.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, every one of them is an oligarchy or a despotism. All of them. Israel is the only one that even approaches anything, and you can criticize it too, because I think any criticism of any nation that is well-founded is perfectly valid, and Israel is no exception to the rule. But damn it, if I'm going to look at any country, and it ain't good enough for me, because there are a bunch of socialists in Israel too, but I had to pick one as the way I would like to be governed, it would be Israel over any other countries in the region. I would not want to be run by any of those Islamists whatsoever.
Well, you got a point there. I don't want to be in Jordan living, that's for sure.
Like I said, Israel is too socialistic for me, and they're too restrictive on a lot of things I think are essential to liberty for me. But again, I'm looking at them relative to their neighbors. And believe me, I think Israel is the best of the lot in that regard.
Yeah. Did Bianchi leave us? I guess so. Oh, boy.
I mean, the way the West countries not only treat their citizens, but the way they treat their fellow Arabs. Why won't any of these Arab nations give these Palestinians some kind of succor, some kind of relief? They don't want anything to do with them either. Why is that?
No.
That's true. That's true.
That ought to tell you something right there.
They had a whole bunch in Kuwait, and when Saddam invaded Kuwait, the Palestinian workers that were there, they turned on the Kuwaitis. They had to ship them all out, get them out of there. No other country over there wants them.
Look at King Hussein of Jordan. He invited them in when when they got a run out of Lebanon by Israel. He invited them in there to get refuge. And what did they do? Tried to overthrow his kingdom. He had to kill tens of thousands of them and kick them out.
Yep.
Joseph, you know,
when I hear all this bleeding about the poor Palestinians, okay, the civilians should be protected to the maximum extent they can. I'm not saying I don't want to see people slaughtered who are not directly involved in this.
More children.
But for God's sake, they killed 1,500 Israeli citizens in one goddamn day. I'll tell you one thing. If I was in a government retaliate significantly after that happened, I wouldn't pay it any taxes, and I wouldn't consider it fit to govern me.
Yeah.
I don't care what the reason was.
And the Palestinians were responsible for the Hamas being in there now. You know, I mean, they had elections, and whether they're implanted in there forcibly or not, it's still, they're a people. You know, they got to get those people out of there. You got corruption. Like us,
yeah,
we got corruption.
The government.
We got to get rid of them.
The government of Hamas declared war on Israel. What are they supposed to do? I'll say, ollie, oxen for you. I guess you had a right to kill 1,500 of our people in one day? Hell no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is a good point.
They, you know, Eric got a multimillionaire. He sent his wife off to live. She lived in Paris. She was a multimillionaire living in Paris while he was dying.
Man. I mean, you got to remember, too, these people were the same people who danced in the street in joy when almost 3,000 of our people got killed on 9/11.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
They were celebrating the death of our citizens, going about their work every day, and flying in an airplane.
Yep. That is true, too, yeah.
Look, I want Israel to win this damn thing, get it the hell over with, so we don't get dragged down into it. They're the ones that have the capacity to do it. Hamas can never defeat Israel as things are now. They're going to have to get Iran involved in it to help them, or one or the other. And it ain't going to be Egypt. Egypt right now has got good relationships with Israel.
Guess what, Sarge?
They don't want to upset that apple cart. It ain't going to be Jordan either. Jordan's not going to do it.
The same book Bianchi was criticizing.
Who's going to have to give them their help to do it?
Sorry, the same book Bianchi was criticizing, saying it's not true or whatnot. Guess what? Says it's not going to happen, and says certain things are going to happen. So, I guess we'll wait and see. If they happen, then I guess the Bible's true. If they don't happen, then I guess the Bible's a lie.
Ain't it? Like, what about you said, man? Military force and wars make nations or keep them sovereign. That's the way of the world. That's the way the world is always going to be. If Hamas can gather the wherewithal to defeat Israel and drive him into the sea, it will be done. If they can't, it won't. It's just that simple.
They won't. They can't. God's not going to allow it to happen. Simple as that.
Yeah.
You know, whether you believe in God or not, I don't know. What to tell you? All I can tell you is there's a lot of countries over there hating Israel. Guess what? Nobody touched them.
That is why I do my best to avoid the religious arguments. I understand the religious arguments have, to a great extent, impelled this situation. I'm not trying to pretend that it hasn't. I know it has. But the decisions that create all this stuff are secular. They are done as a result of people recognizing boundaries, treaties, and agreements. Now, I understand the religious inspiration behind it all, and the fact that some people believe they're the chosen people, and other people believe they got a claim to it, and they need to exterminate this other group or whatever. I understand all that, and they think it has a religious foundation, but when you get down to brass tacks, who's got the force or the wherewithal to get people to make agreements or to force them to their will? That's what everything always comes down to, bottom line. And right now, does Hamas have the ability to do this to Israel? I don't think so. Israel's going to do this. The idea of Palestine and Gaza becoming self-governing is out the window for at least the next 20 to 30 years. And they brought this on themselves because they could have had their own state in 2005 when the Israelis completely pulled out. They just refused to recognize Israel and come to a diplomatic recognition of them.
So let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Would you want 20,000 or 25,000 Palestinians resettled in your town?
No. I would not.
But Joe's getting ready to bring tens of thousands of them over here. That's what Joe Biden wants to do. And him and them rat bastards in the Congress. So the people in the whole region don't want them. The people share the same language and much of the same culture. They don't want them.
No.
This is crazy.
Did y'all see Joe Biden today on the when he was with Macron and his wife, and they were standing up there, and Joe thought he should sit down, and there was no chair there. Did y'all see that?
Yeah, no, I saw it. It was another pathetic example of our decrepit commander-in-chief. It was really sad. On the 80th anniversary, those 100-year-old veterans were more spry than he is. It's sad. 100-year-old guys with more recall and more cognitive ability than the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States. Just unreal watching that.
Yeah. So where is this thing with Hunter Biden going? Do you think he's going to get convicted?
The fix is in. I can tell you that right now. The facts on the line show he ought to be convicted because the facts aren't even greatly in dispute. The fix is in. Joe Biden got the Hunter. Well, Halle Biden, though, was pretty condemnatory in her testimony. She didn't seem to go easy on Hunter Biden at all. She established a lot of facts for the prosecution. But I think the fix is in with the jury. He's going to either get a hung jury or he'll be acquitted.
You're right, Sarge. I think that'll create enough conflict right there. You know, that'll be a good feeding the machine for animosity in America.
Yep. But all the facts are clear, man. The facts establish that he look, and I don't agree with the federal law that says you should be automatically relieved of your Second Amendment rights, no matter who it is, simply because you have a drug addiction. Any more than that should disqualify you from voting. Yep. But the law is what it is. It's the law right now. It's clear as a bell that he violated.
But other people have gone to prison for the very same violation.
For sure. And will continue to do so after he is acquitted.
Yeah. Well, again, we said last night, I don't know when was my show, that sometime in the fall. And shit always happens in the fall. September 11th, the banker bailout, everything always happens in the fall. And they're saying this fall something's going to go down. That's what they're saying. From the email I got from the supposed Rothschild /AKA Bilderberg guy that I know.
It's called the October Surprise every election year. Yep.
Could be.
Well, I think we're going to have a long, hot summer. I think it's going to be violent.
It's hot down here today. Oh, God.
We're just waiting for the spark. We're waiting for our George Floyd moment to set everything up.
Yeah. Riots in the streets again. Or police shooting. Yeah, another police shooting.
It's not just a George Floyd thing. That's a real possibility. But it could be a Russian-European thing, man. The Russians are rattling their sabers, talking about they start shooting us with these American hypersonic missiles, and then Joe Biden says, we're only going to limit it to border threats where there are concentrations of Russian artillery in the border. But look, we all know how that can be when some anonymous targeter decides to target some location further away from the immediate front line, and there ain't no way to control that, for sure. And hey, Joe, let me keep emphasizing this. The entire active duty Army, including combat troops and support personnel, and remember, combat service support troops are 9-1 to the combat troops. The whole goddamn thing is less than 500,000 personnel on active duty. Less than 500,000. Now, how the hell is the Army like that going to fight a ground war in Europe with Russia with a short supply line, relatively speaking? You tell me.
I don't know.
It's not like we could send all of them over there. We can't send all 450,000 of them over there. A lot of them are deployed elsewhere in the world, and they got to stay there.
Yeah.
And in the United States. So how many can we send to Europe? Maybe 150, 180,000?
How many do we got over there already?
Give me a break. Please, give me a break. The Russians do one thing they do is accept the heavy casualties. That's in their playbook.
They don't write home and they don't have to let anybody know about it until decades later.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like like I was saying about that earlier, about that Operation Bagration that they destroyed the German Army Group Center. That was the first time they were able to show they were masters of the operational art, like the Germans had been, because they were able to employ what their version of blitzkrieg called the deep battle, and it's still part of their doctrine today. And they're starting to use it fairly effectively in Ukraine. They're getting rid of all those inept, corrupt, they're weeding out the chaff in their corrupt, inept generals. They've got plenty of battlefield experience now. They've learned a lot of the lessons against the Ukrainians, like they did in 1941. They started to do the same kind